Chapter 2. Now, on the third day, a marriage was held in Galilee, and Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, was there. And Yeshua was called to the marriage with his Talmudim. So when they were lacking wine at the marriage, the mother of Yeshua said unto him, They do not have any wine. Yeshua answered her, Woman, what is that to me or to you? My time is not due yet. The mother of Yeshua said to the attendants, You must do everything he tells you. Now there were 6 water jars of stone there, being placed according to the custom of the cleansing of the Yahudim, and every one of the water jars holds 2 or 3 measures. Then Yeshua said to them, Fill all the water jars with water. Therefore they filled them with as much water as they could hold. Then Yeshua said to them, Take out from them and bring it, and give some to drink to the leader of ceremonies. So they brought it to her. And when the leader of ceremonies had tasted the water, they saw that he turned it into wine. She did not know where it came from, but the servants, those who brought the water to the leader of ceremonies, knew it. She called the betrothed man and said to him, Every man first sets down the good wine, and after they are satisfied, then the inferior remainder of wine. But you concealed the good wine until now. Thus Yeshua did this first sign in Galilee, and he revealed his exaltation, and his Talmudim recognized him. After these things, he went down into Kephar Nechem, he and his mother, and his brothers, and his Talmudim, and they stayed there a few days. Now the Pesach of the Yehudim was near, so Yeshua went up into Jerusalem. And he found in the sanctuary men selling flock and cattle and doves. And when he had made something like platings of cords, he drove them all out of the sanctuary, also the flock and the cattle. And he scattered the money of the money changers and cast down their tables. And he said to those who sold doves, Cast these things away from this place, and do not make the house of my Father a house of merchandise. And his Talmudim remembered that it is written, The love of your house consumes me. Then the Yahudim answered and said, What sign will you show us that you do this? Yeshua answered and said to them, You will cast down this sanctuary, but in 3 days I will raise it up. Then the Yahudim said to him, This sanctuary was extended among us, and the work had to continue for 46 years. And do you say you will do it in 3 days? But what he said about the sanctuary of his heart. And they believed in the scripture and in the word which Yeshua had spoken. Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Pesach on the day of the feast, many Yahudim, seeing the signs which he did, believed in his name. But Yeshua did not give his trust to them, for he knew all of them. And he did not need that the witness be hastily done for him about the men, for he knew what was in the men. Chapter 3. There was another man whose name was Nicodemus, and he was a leader of the Yahudim. And in the night he came unto Yeshua and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you came from the heavens, for no man is able to do these signs except El be with him. Yeshua answered and said to him, Truth I say to you, no man will reach to see the kingdom of heavens, except he become born anew. Nicodemus answered him, How is a man able to be born when he is old? Is a man able to return to his mother's belly and come into the world again? Yeshua answered, Truth I say to you, no man will enter into the kingdom of heavens except he who becomes born again, of water and of Ruach HaKodesh. That which is born from the flesh is flesh, but that which is born from Ruach is Ruach. Do not be astonished because I say it is necessary that you become born anew. The Ruach blows to the place where it wants, and you hear the sound, but you do not know where it comes or goes. and so is the man who is born from Ruach. Nicodemus answered and said to him, How can these things be possible? Yeshua answered and said to him, You are a rabbi in Yashar'el, yet you do not know these things? Truth I say to you, that we speak what we know, and we do witness of what we have seen, but you do not accept our witnesses. If I tell you worldly things and you do not believe them, how will you believe the heavenly things if I tell you of them? And there is no one who has ascended up to the heavens except he who descended from the heavens, the Son of Man who is from the heavens. And Moshe lifted up and exalted the serpent in the wilderness. So it is obligated that the Son of Man be lifted up, in order that the sons of man who believe in him will not perish, but reach everlasting life. For El loves the world so much that he gave his only Son, one alone begotten, to the world, in order that he who believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. For Eloah did not send his Son into the world in order to judge the world, but in order that the world may be saved through him. Whosoever believes in him will not be judged, but whosoever does not believe in him is already judged, because he does not believe in the eternal, the one alone begotten Son of Eloah. And this is the appearance of the heart. The lamp came to the world, but the men loved darkness and gloom more than the lamp, for their deeds are evil. For every man who does the evil curses the lamp, and he is not in the light, so that he will not be caught in his deeds. But whosoever does truth comes into the lamp in order that his deeds may be revealed, that they are done in the name of El. After these things, Yeshua came with his Talmudim in the land of Yehuda, and there he stayed with them and immersed. Now Yochanan was immersing by a mountain near Shalem, for there was much water there, and many came unto him, and he immersed them, for Yochanan had not yet been placed in the house of prison. Then a question occurred among the Talmudim of Yochanan concerning the purification. So they came to Yochanan and said, Rabbi, he who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, of whom you did witness, he immerses, and everyone comes unto him. Yochanan answered and said, No man is able to obtain unless it is given to him from the heavens. You yourselves do witness to me that I told you I am not Mashiach, but I am sent before him. He who has the betrothed woman is the betrothed man, but this is the friend of the betrothed man, he who stands and hears him, and is glad with joy because of the voice of the betrothed man. And it is fitting to give him the greatness, but me the smallness. Whosoever comes for esteem from everyone is he who speaks from the earth, but he who comes from the heavens is above all. And he does witness of what he heard and saw, yet no man receives his witness. But whosoever receives his witness signifies that he is the true Eloah. For he whom Yahuwah had sent speaks the word. For Yahuwah does not give the Ruach with measure. The Father loves the Son, and he gave everything in his hand. And whosoever believes in the Son has everlasting life. However, whosoever does not believe the Son does not have life, but the anger of Yahuwah abides on him. All right, take it away, Rob.
All right. Dear Father, we come to you today to review your words, and we ask that your Spirit be upon us to look through these words, that they may speak to us, that we may have a better understanding of you and have a better relationship with you. Father, may you bless this time that we have together, and may the Spirit speak through us, and so that your truth may be known and that we can explore further so that we have that deeper relationship. Father, we give thanks and praise to your mighty name for this opportunity to do so. In Yahushua's name we pray. Hallelujah. All right, this is the Unexpected Cosmology, and we will be speaking this week on chapter 2 and chapter 3 on the Hebrew Gospel of Yochanan. And last week we did chapter 1 and went into details on that. So please don't miss that. But this week here we will be doing chapter 2 and chapter 3. We'll be taking turns between myself, Michael, and Noel, reading through these. And then after we read through each section, we will then give our findings of like scriptures to further dig deeper into what we just read. So, with that said, I will pass it over to Michael to read start beginning chapter 2.
Yes, thank you so much. John chapter 2. Now, on the third day, a marriage was held in Galilee, and Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, was there. And Yeshua was called to the marriage with his Talmudim. So, when they were lacking wine at the marriage, the mother of Yeshua said unto him, They do not have any wine. Yeshua answered her, Woman, what is that to me or to you? My time is not due yet. The mother of Yeshua said to the attendants, You must do everything he tells you. Now there were 6 water jars of stone there, being placed according to the custom of the cleansing of the Yehudim. And every one of the water jars holds 2 or 3 measures. Then Yeshua said to them, Fill all the water jars with water. Therefore filled them with as much water as they could hold. Then Yeshua said to them, Take out from them and bring it, and give some to drink to the leader of the ceremonies. So they brought it to her. And when the leader of the ceremonies had tasted the water, they saw that he turned it into wine. She did not know where it came from, but the servants, those who brought the water to the leader of ceremonies, knew it. She called the betrothed man and said to him, Every man first sets down the good wine, and after they are satisfied, then the inferior remainder of wine. But you concealed the good wine until now. Thus Yeshua did first sign in Beth Galilee, and he revealed his exaltation, and his Talmudim recognized him. Thank you.
All right, Shabbat Shalom for everyone still on Shabbat time, daylight Shabbat hours, or nighttime Shabbat hours. My name is Noel, and I get the privilege tonight to start talking about observations on Yochanan chapter 2. Now, Rob, Michael, and I, all three of us, we all are going to take turns tonight going through our own observations on this chapter, and we have not compared notes. So I don't have a clue what they're going to talk about, and hopefully I will not steal their thunder in any way. With that being said, let me pull up my notes here. I just lost them. So Yochanan, the Greek Gospel of John, or here in this case, the Hebrew Gospel of John, is a book saturated with water. It's everywhere you look, from the very first chapter until I think the very last chapter. The woman at the well is just one such example. People are thirsty, and Messiah offers them a drink. In this passage, we're revisiting Yahusha, or we're revisiting Yahusha turning the water into wine, only we're doing so from, of course, the Hebrew Gospel. And no, it wasn't grape juice. I had to say that. I don't think anyone listening in thinks wine is a sin, but you never really know. You don't know who's going to be watching this on YouTube land. Now, I grew up in I guess what you would call a Bible-built congregation. I recall one pastor, I was sitting there listening to, I went to a school, and on Wednesday he's giving his talk to the school. And I remember one such sermon where he would work himself up into tears, and he would recall all his experiences in the Vietnam War. And his horror story was, I'll never forget this, that his army buddies forced him into a chair, and they forced him to take his first drink of wine. And he said he would talk about how like this drop of wine went on his tongue, and that he had betrayed Jesus in that moment, and he wished he could take that back. It was like the worst thing that ever happened to him. And I say that because when we read scripture, it has the complete opposite view than anyone who grew up in a church like that. And I was kind of surrounded by those, kind of knows what I'm talking about. And scripture is the complete opposite. Wine, as well as strong drink, is used in scripture to denote joy. It's actually used to announce the coming messianic kingdom on earth. So here's one right here where wine is used to address the coming kingdom. And this, by the way, I'm giving this passage because it actually expresses what we just read in John chapter 2, and I'll get to that. I don't know if I really need to read this whole passage, but this comes from Amos chapter 9. I'll just read verse 14, but just so everyone knows, the context here is the coming kingdom of Messiah. And I will bring again the captivity of my people of Yashar'el, and they shall build the waste cities. This is the context, they're brought back into the land, and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. Here's one from Psalm chapter 104, verses 14 through 15, I believe. You cause the grass to grow for the livestock and plants for man to cultivate, and he may bring forth food from the earth, and wine to gladden the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread to strengthen man's heart. As you can see, the bread is not a metaphor, nor is the oil a metaphor, nor is the wine, a metaphor for grape juice. All that to say, you see that wine is used as an example of joy when the actual kingdom is brought in. All right. So here's a few observations I had on the differences between the Greek gospel and the Hebrew gospel. Now, this one was actually a little bit alarming at first. In chapter 2, verse 1, it never says, well, let's see what let me pull up the Greek here, what it says. The Greek, the King James version, which comes from the Texas Receptus, says, and the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Okay, so let's read now from the Hebrew. It says, now on the third day a marriage was held in Galilee, and Mary, the mother of Yeshua, was there. Did anyone else notice what was missing? It never says Cana. It never says the wedding was held in Cana. Again, let me look here in verse 12. It doesn't say Cana. It says be it Galilee or Galilee. All right. So Bietz in Hebrew means house of the Father. I started searching. I'm like, well, wait a second here. If it wasn't held in Cana, because now we have to assume that for whatever reason, we don't know why, for whatever reason, Cana was added to the Greek, or maybe it was in the Hebrew, and in this particular Hebrew document we have, for whatever reason, Cana was left out. I don't know. All I know is we're looking at a Hebrew document and Cana is not there. So I started looking around, and I found a Biet Shirim near to Nazareth. And, it has some of the same wording that was used there for Biet in verse 12. So we see a Biet, which means house. And I kind of looked where it is to Cana. It's about 20 to 30 kilometers walk from Cana, but it's actually very close to Nazareth. So I was like, okay, there's a contender right there. And also, this is interesting, there is a Bethlehem in Galilee. It's called Bethlehem of Galilee. It was popular in official history according to the Templars, and they had settlements there. And I am told that that Bethlehem Galilee is overshadowed by the more popular Bethlehem that we all know and love. Anyways, that being said, it's not there. Now, it doesn't change anything, I don't think, because we see in this description that it is still in Galilee, and it appears to be in the mountains. So it's in the area of Cana. I just wanted to throw that out there. In John verse 4, I have so many different screens here. I got to jump around. I actually really like the way the Hebrew read more. Now, in the Greek, it says this, Jesus saith unto her, woman, what have I done with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. And in the Hebrew, he said, Yeshua answered her, woman, what is that to me or to you? My time is not due yet. And to me, reading it in the English, it seemed like he was a little bit less dismissive towards his mother. In the Greek, it says, what have I to do with thee? The Hebrew, what is that to me or to you? And so it just seemed a little bit more polite. This was something really interesting too, that in the Greek, verse 8, it says that it records the governor of the feast. All right, so let me pull that up here. And he saith unto them, this is the Greek, the Textus Receptus, draw out now and bear unto the governor of the feast, and they bear it. All right, now pay careful attention to how the Hebrew records the same verse. Then Yeshua said to them, take out from them and bring it, and give some to drink to the leader of ceremonies. So they brought it to her. All right. So now all of a sudden, the leader of the ceremonies in the Hebrew gospel is identified as a woman. And it actually says it a few times in here. Verse 9 again says, a woman tastes the wine. This gives strength to the impression and what has long been assumed that the couple being married are either friends or possibly relatives of the family, of Yahusha's family, and that Miriam has a helping hand in the arrangements, particularly as they pertain to food and drink. I don't know why the Greek would leave out the fact that this is a woman, because it records many women throughout the Gospels. But I thought that was just a nice little touch there that reads differently, and because every single movie interpretation I've seen, it that the master of the ceremonies is always a man, but it's like, no, this is a woman, back there with Miriam, trying to prepare the food and the drink. So that was a little interesting. All right, so this is what I want to kind of really particularly focus on here before I hand it over. In verse 11, his disciples, let me get this right. Verse 11 in the King James, again, the Greek, the Textus Receptus says this: this beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee. So again, just a reminder, Cana is absent from the Hebrew, but that's not what I want to focus on. The beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. All right, so it says his disciples believed on him. All right, now this is what it says in the Hebrew. Then Yahusha did his first sign in Beet Galilee, or Galala, and he revealed his exaltation. So still pretty much the same. And then, but it says this, and his Talmudim, his disciples, recognized him. All right, so we're going to be looking at the differences here between his disciples believed on him or recognized him. Not a huge difference, but I just really like the wording there, that his disciples recognized him. Obviously, they obviously knew who he was. They knew what he looked like, but they recognized him from Scripture. So I wanted to go back and figure out. They don't tell us what passage is being recognized here. There are any number of prophecies described in the Tanakh regarding the coming Messiah, but here's one from Yeshayahu, or Isaiah chapter 25. And I thought, well, maybe this is what they recognized him when he turned the water to wine. And its mountain shall Yahuwah Sevaoth make unto all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, a fat of things full of marrow, of wines on the leaves well refrained. So here we see wine again. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. Okay, so we see a little bit about the wine here, but it gets better. He will swallow up death and victory, and Adonai Yahuwah will wipe away tears from off all faces, and the rebuke of his people shall he take away from all the earth, for Yahuwah has spoken. All right, so if the disciples here are recognizing Yahusha as the son of Elohim, as the Messiah, they're already making the connection to the wine here in the mountains. But now they're seeing the same passage, that this is the same guy who's going to swallow up death and victory. This is the same guy, Adonai, who will wipe away tears from off all faces, because the former things will not be remembered. It's the same guy who's going to rebuke all the nations, but then it keeps going on. And it shall be in that day, this is where it gets really good. Lo, this is our Elohim. We have waited for him, and he will save us. So they're recognizing now that they're in the spot of saying, this is our Elohim. We have waited for him, and he will save us. This is Yahuwah. We have waited for him. We will be glad and rejoice in his Yeshua, his salvation. Of course, that's right. So I'm going to hand it over to Rob and Michael now, but we will see in this same chapter, if I'm not mistaken, that there's kind of a difference in the verbiage between the Greek and the Hebrew. And the Greek, for whatever reason, the person who translated into Greek was making it out like the disciples did not believe until after his death. And yet that's not really what I'm getting here in the Hebrew, that it seemed like they recognized exactly who he was and some of the things he was going to do. So with that, I'm going to hand it back. I think, Rob, it's your turn.
All right, thank you, Noel. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I did want to add on this part. I have most of my feedback on the next part here, but regarding these first 11 verses, what I wanted to add is simply regarding the verse 9, when the leader of the ceremonies had tasted the water, they saw that he turned it into wine. Uh, she did not know where it came from, but the servants, they did, obviously, because they saw what would happen. So I just wanted to point out that this is to me like symbolic of the waters of baptism. So we have, we are we're made anew, so to speak. Uh, Hence, walking out in love and producing fruit. So we're baptized, we're made anew, we're now walking out, producing fruit in our walk afterwards. And with that, you produce fruit, the fruit of the vine, so to speak. And over time, that fruit ferments, can ferment. So that's how I'm tying in the water and the wine aspect. Start out as with these vessels, with the water being filled to the brim, and then them being turned into wine through salvation, through Yeshua. So we see that. That's how I see this, and tying in the water, baptism, being made new, and then producing fruit afterwards. And that fruit over time obviously would represent fermented wine and so forth. So that was really the only thing I wanted to add. Besides, you covered it was perfect. So, but that was all I wanted to add to this section here. And I do agree with you that as I'm reading this, it does appear that the taught ones, I mean, they believed it was. They didn't. They believed then, and they were all on board. Not afterwards. I think afterwards it was the confirmation, second witness, so to speak. But I'll turn it over to Michael next to add his feedback on this next section. Michael, you there?
Well, if we've lost
Michael.
Michael, then if we
Yeah.
have lost Michael, we can just jump into the next reading. He just went out of the group. Let's see if he comes back.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Now we can.
I
You're here.
okay. Okay, so I just had a few things real quick. So on verse 1, I wanted to point out that the third day, I was wondering if there was significance with their, like, resurrection or something like that. And Noel kind of hit on that as well. Someone saying anything? No? Okay. And I think there is significance with the first miracle being water to wine, like you guys were saying. Could it be symbolically talking about the marriage supper of the Lamb? And I wanted to do a cross reference as well, and it's in Jeremiah 31. Everybody knows, that chapter. That's the New Covenant chapter. 31:12. They will come and shout for joy on the height of Zion, and they will be radiant over the bounty of the Lord, over the grain, the new wine, and the oil, and over the young of the flock and the herd. And their life will be like a watered garden, and they will never languish again. So I just wanted to again point out the third day, the wine, the marriage supper, and it appears to be like a resurrection in Jeremiah 31, talking about new wine. I also wanted to talk about that the Gospel of John mentions the mother of Yeshua twice. So he mentions her right here, and then also in chapter 19, 25 through 27. But he doesn't name her in the Greek, and it's the only canonical gospel to explicitly state that she was present at the crucifixion. But yet in the Hebrew, right in the first verse of chapter 2, mentions her by name. So I thought that was interesting that it doesn't mention her by name in the Greek, but in the Hebrew, the first verse in chapter 2, it mentions her and mentions her by name. The next thing I have is, and Noel talked about it as well, number 4, woman, what is that to me or to you? And I'm wondering if that was a Hebrew idiom, if anybody knows more about that. But there is one cross-reference that I found that really fits. 2 Kings 3, 12 through 13. And Jehoshaphat said, is the word of the Lord at him? So the word of the Lord. And then continuing, which said, yeah, it is. And Jehoshaphat said, and the word of the Lord is with him. And so the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and king of Edom went down to him. And Elisha said to the king of Israel, what is it to me and to thee, and an idolater? Go thou to the prophets of thy father and thy mother. So I'm not saying, Yeshua is calling his mom a idolater, but it seems to be the same thing. What is it to me and to thee is what Yeshua is saying. Woman, what is that to me or to you? And I just thought it was interesting that 2 Kings literally says the word of the Lord is at him. The next thing, number 5. So the mother of Yeshua said to the attendants, you must do everything he tells you. And I was looking for another parallel, and this one's really, really cool. So everybody knows that Joseph is a prototype of Yeshua. Genesis 41:55. So when all the land of Egypt suffered famine, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, and whatever he says to you, you shall do. So I thought that was interesting, that Yeshua you go to him for bread. The mother said that exact phrase, you must do everything he tells you. And the Pharaoh said that to the Egyptians, go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, you shall do. I thought that was awesome, that was just another prototype from Joseph to Yeshua. And finally, Noel spoke about it, where they did mention in number 8 and 9 that they took out the feminine, the her. It states it's a she. So in my opinion, this is just another example where the Greek is diminishing women, like the set-apart spirit. And so if a leader of ceremonies is a woman, I guess I'm equating it to somewhat like a wedding planner today, and that's mostly women. So I just, again, wanted to point out, like Noel said, the difference between the Hebrew and the Greek, where it took out the feminine aspect. That's all I got for the first part. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, before I start reading the next section, and then Rob, if there was anything else you wanted to throw in here, I didn't even pick up on that until Michael, you just said it. But you had made the comparison between Yahusha and Yosef, and whatever he says, do it. Well, there's another line very similar to this from another messianic prototype, and that is Yahushua or Joshua, which, just so you guys aren't confused, we're talking about the Yahushua who came after Moshe. And in Yahushua chapter 1, they're going into the land, and the people are saying to him, to Yahushua, it says this, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. So that's a very, very kind of similar line, but then it follows up with this. Just as we fully obeyed Moshe, so we will obey you. Only may Yahuwah, your Elohim, be with you as he was with Moshe. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey it, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. I don't know if that's a comparison, that's a good comparison or not, but you kind of, that came to mind as soon as you started talking about Yosef in the same statement. So, Rob, is there anything you wanted to add before I start reading the second section of chapter 2?
Yeah, just quickly on verse 6, talking about the stone jars. That's something else I'm going to be talking about the next section. But these stone jars, it says the six stone water jars. The And as you see in the King James and in the Hebrew Gospel, it talks about them being in the manner of purifying of the Jews and according to the customs of cleansing. So we know that these stones were clean, not unclean jars that he filled this water in. So the water's going into these clean vessels, and then hence through him they're turned into wine. So and I'll expound more on the stones too next, but just keep that in mind. I just want to point that out.
Okay. Michael, was there anything you wanted to add before I continue on?
No, sir. Nope.
All
All
right.
good.
Okay, starting in verse 12 of chapter 2, and we'll be reading through the end of the chapter. After these things, he, Yahusha here, went down into Kephar Nechem, he and his mother, and his brothers, and his Talmudim, and they stayed there a few days. Now, the Passover of the Yahudim was near, so Yeshua went up into Jerusalem, and he found in the sanctuary men selling flock and cattle and doves. And when he had made something like platings of cords, he drove them all out of the sanctuary, also the flock and the cattle. And he scattered the money of the money changers and cast down their tables. And he said to those who sold doves, "Cast these things away from this place, and do not make the house of my father a house of merchandise." And his Talmudim remembered that it is written, "The love of your house consumes me." Then the Yahudim answered and said, "What sign will you show us that you do this?" Yeshua answered and said to them, "You will cast down this sanctuary, but in 3 days I will raise it up." Then the Yahudim said to him, "This sanctuary was extended among us, and that work had to continue for 46 years. And do you say you will do it in 3 days?" But what he said about the sanctuary of his heart. And they believed in the scripture and in the word which Yeshua had spoken. Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the uh, Passover on the day of the feast, many Yahudim, seeing the signs which he did, believed in his name. But Yeshua did not give his trust to them, for he knew all of them. And he did not need that the witness be hastily done for him about the men, for he knew what when the men. All right, Rob, handing it back over to you.
Okay, uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna start with verse 14, talking about the sanctuary. A couple things about it. As he found in the sanctuary, men, they're selling merchandise in the Father's house. And there's a high regard for the sanctuary, which is taken seriously by Yah. And here the Son comes in, and it is frustrating. And you see in his actions him acting so. And a couple verses to complement this is Leviticus 19:30 and 26:2. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am Yahweh. So here we see Yah is serious about his sanctuary. You are to reverence it, take it serious. And here they are selling merchandise within those walls. And then Ecclesiastes 5:1 says, guard your steps when you go to God's house. So you got, once again, you got to be very careful going into the house of Yah. I mean, even guarding the steps, being very careful. It has to be reverence. It has to be serious. And so here's Yeshua seeing that the Father's house has become a house of merchandise, and that is not tolerable. So regarding that house of merchandise, I want to speak also on the king of Tyre in Ezekiel 28:14 through 16. And when we're talking about the king of Tyre, it's referencing Hasatan here. He's speaking here in Ezekiel. You were the anointed cherub who covers. Then I set you up on the holy mountain of Yah. You have walked up and down in the middle of the stones of fire. You were perfected. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. By the abundance of your commerce, your insides were filled with violence, and you have sinned. Therefore, I have cast you as profane out of God's mountain. I have destroyed you, covering cherub from the middle of the stones of fire. So we see here by the abundance of his commerce, which that word means trade. The peddling, the merchandise, the traffic. So from the abundance of him doing these things, it led him to his sins. And here we see the father's house full of merchandisers. And this was the sin of Hasatan that led him to do what he did. And so that's why this is such a big no-no. And I don't know how many people realize that, other than, okay, yeah, they're selling, the sacrificial animals within the four walls. But here we see that the big no-no here is Hasatan was caught up in this abundance of commerce that led to his fall. So that was huge. And then on 17, regarding the love of your house consumes me. So that's referencing Psalm 69:9. Also think about the love David had on bringing the ark into the city. How David danced. He just went all out, bringing the ark in. The love just consumed him with bringing the ark into the house and fulfilling it in the temple and so forth. So, or bring it into the city. So it just consumed him, and we saw that through David's actions. Next, I wanted to also point out on 19, we're talking about 3 days. Here, another position where 3 days I will raise it up, talking about the sanctuary. And we know that this is talking about his body being raised up. So in 1 Peter 3:18, for Mashiach also has once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to Yahweh, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Ruach. So this is, supporting what was going to happen when he was referencing this, the sanctuary in 3 days. Then, and then on 20, we have the sanctuary being built. It took 46 years. I want to touch on that, a sanctuary with stones. So we read in 1 Peter 2:5 through 6. You also, as living stones, are built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Yah through Yahusha HaMashiach, because it is contained in Scripture. Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen and precious. He who believes in him will not be disappointed. So, talking about the sanctuary being rebuilt, it's being rebuilt upon the cornerstone of Yahusha. And with that, I wanted to read a section of, let me pull it up here, the section of the Shepherd of Hermas. And in that book, I'm just going to read the section of his third vision, and it's the parable of the tower. And it's like 70 verses, so I'm going to summarize it and try to quickly read through this and talk about these stones, the living stones. So in this vision, there's an old lady in this vision that Hermes is interacting with in this vision, and he sees her, interacts with her, and then he sees 6 young men. There's a tower built by the 6 men upon a square in the water, a moat, if you will. And each stone fits exact to the tower as if it was one stone. Thousands of other men brought them stones, the 6 guys, they brought them stones. Some rejected, others fit. Some were cut out and cast them a distance from the tower. But many lay around the tower of no use. Some were rough, others jagged, while others were white and round, not proper to fit. There were stones cast far away, falling into the wayside, rolled into a desert place. Others were falling into fire and burning, while others were near the water, yet could not roll themselves into, though they desired to. The meaning of this is explained from the woman to Hermas, and she says, and summarize, the tower were the saints, believers from the past, present, and future. So that's these stones. That's the believers, the saints. The water that's around the tower, the moat, is what the saints are saved by, for it is founded by the word and power of Yah. 6 young men are the first appointed higher angels, and the other men are angels. The square fitted stones are the apostles, ministers, healers, teachers, walking in authority, in modesty, righteous servants to the elect of Yah, having shalom. The stones brought from out of the deep were those who were passed and suffered, those who had passed and suffered for the sake of Yah's name. The unpolished stones walked in the Torah of Yah and faithful. The stones rejected, laying by the tower, have sinned and willing to repent, so that they are close to the tower and will be useful if they repent. If they repent while the tower is building, uh, then they will become strong in faith. But if they do not before the tower is finished, there will be no place for them, but will be rejected. So they will not be put in a tower. But they're there. They just need to repent. The stones that were cut out and cast far out are the children of iniquity, the lawlessness, who believe in hypocrisy and departed not from their evil ways. The great number of rugged stones about the tower, but not used, are those who have known the truth, but have not continued in it and not been joined to the saints, therefore unprofitable. The jagged stones kept up discord in their hearts against each other and live not in peace. They are friendly within the brethren, but when departed, the wickedness continues in their hearts. Heart thing. The cut and short stones are those who have believed, but are in a great amount of wickedness. For their cause they are not whole. The white and round stones have faith, but with the riches and merchandise of this world deny Yah when troubles arise. When their riches are cut away, they will take delight and will be profitable to Yah. And she mentions Hermas was one of those stones. The stones cut far away or cast far away, falling into the wayside, rolled into the desert places. They have believed, but through doubting have forsaken the true way, thinking that they could find better. But they wandered and are miserable going into desolate ways. The stones that fell into the fire and burned are those who passed, who did not repent from their heart, from the wickedness they committed. The stones near the water, who are those who hear the word and were willing to be baptized in the name of Yah, but knowing the righteousness the truth requires, withdrew and walked after their wicked lusts. So I think that that parable of these stones of building this tower and the descriptions of these stones are very impactful, very insightful to the different believers and those who are walking in this world, and how some are so close to the tower and some can be used, even some of the faraway ones can, but through these different means, they are unprofitable. They cannot be used. And then there's going to be a time when the final, the last day comes. There is no more opportunities, or their last day of breath on this earth. There is no more opportunity. So I wanted to share that because I thought that was going to be insightful regarding living stones, from what I had just mentioned. And then there's two more things I just want to quickly mention at the end here on verse 24, talking about seeing signs. What is here? Yeshua trusting in him, for he knew all of them. But he knows false men, and that's referencing Job 11:11. For he knows false men, he sees iniquity also, even though he doesn't consider it. And Proverbs 21:2. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the hearts. And I just want to emphasize the hearts. I was reading the stones and these actions are all based upon their hearts. Are the hearts in it? Are they going to act on their heart that is true, or are they only walking in hypocrisy and fooling themselves? So, with that being said, that was my insight and what I wanted to add, and I'll move it on over to Michael.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I don't have much, but I have some cross references. Shocker. But number 15, we can talk about the history of the money changers and all that. I just wanted to do a cross reference that I thought was pretty cool. Malachi 3:1. It's a long one. Behold, I am sending my messenger, which we discussed messenger last week, and he will clear a way before me. And the Lord whom you are seeking will suddenly come to his temple, the money changers, and the messenger of the covenant, this renewed covenant, it seems, in whom you delight. Behold, he is coming, says the Lord of armies. But who can endure the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire and like launderer's soap. And he will sit as a smelter and purifier of silver. I don't know if that has to do with the coinage. And he will purify the sons of Levi and refine them like gold and silver, so that they may present the Lord's offerings in righteousness. I just thought that was kind of cool. Kind of like a different take on the money changers verse. Okay, so the next thing is number 16. So, and he said to those who sold doves, cast these things away from this place, and do not make the house of my father a house of merchandise. I just wanted to point out that we kind of discussed this last week. Luke 2:49, and he said to them, why is it that you were looking for me? Do you not know that I had to be in my father's house? And so we discussed Luke 2 being before he was baptized, before he started his quote unquote ministry. And then here on 16, it's, as he's starting his ministry. And both times is his father's house. So I just wanted to point out that he was always doing his father's business, and his father's house is in those temples. The next thing, Rob kind of mentioned it on number 17, but he didn't read it fully, so I'm going to do that as well. And his Talmudim remembered that it is written, the love of your house consumes me. So as Rob said, it is from Psalms 69, 8 through 9. And I was going to add some commentary after that. So I have become estranged from my brothers and a stranger to my mother's son. For zeal for your house has consumed me, and the taunts of those who taunt you have fallen on me. So I just wanted to highlight, estranged from his brothers, a stranger to my mother's sons, for your house has consumed me. And I just thought that it reminded me of the other verse, a prophet is not welcome in his own town. Like even your brothers are going to turn on you. So I thought that was an awesome cross-reference as well. And finally, I don't have much on this, but I think we might get on this later, but the sanctuary of the heart and the difference between the temple of his body. So number 21 in the Greek, but he spake of the temple of his body, where in the Hebrew it says, but what he said about the sanctuary of the heart. I guess real quick, I'm going to try and make the case that, it's always been about the heart, and that's the temple. So basically, obedience has always been better than sacrifice. It's always been about the heart. Yeshua kind of made that real clear, I thought, in the New Testament. The Pharisees, they were doing the law. but they were dirty on the inside, right? Their cup was dirty on the inside. They needed to clean their cup. In my opinion, that's talking about their heart. There's a verse in Matthew that says, don't listen to what they say, but don't do what they do, because they're hypocrites. Fasting, I look at it as fasting is like an offering to the Father.
Michael, I think we lost you. Hello?
Let's give him a minute. He's going to pop back in. Michael, you here? Okay, we still can't hear you.
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the last thing I said?
Well,
I can
Offering of the heart.
just say my note again on the 21. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to start over. So basically, I want to talk about the temple of his body on 21 and the sanctuary of the heart. So I'm going to make the quick case that it's always been about the heart and your body. So obedience has always been better than sacrifice. It's always been obedience of the heart. Pharisees, they were dirty on the inside. They did all the right things. They had the long seats. They prayed outside in the temple, but their hearts were dirty, and he always called out their hearts. When you fast, that's kind of a fat or burnt offering to the Father. You're burning your fat if your body's the temple up to him. No unclean foods was always about your body. It's the same as it was back then. You don't put pork in your body because your body has always been the temple. People can keep Sabbath, but if they're not doing it from the right place, they're just checking boxes. So it's always, in my opinion, it's always been about the heart, because your body's always been the temple. So no, it doesn't specifically say your body is the temple, but to me, it's always been that way, and it appears that way. And that's it for me. Thank you, guys.
all right. That was great. Both Rob and Michael. And Rob, the connection with the shepherd of Hermas. I had read that before, and I love that passage. When I read that passage in the shepherd about the tower and how we're all these different stones, and some people are usable and some are rejected, and other things, that really moved me. And so I didn't even make that connection, and that was really good. And now I want to say to everyone here that, and Rob and Michael know this, and just want to make clear that all three of us, though I think that Rob, Michael, and I think very similarly. Obviously, anything that any of us say, is not represented by the other person. So anything I'm about to say here does not represent Rob or Michael's views. I say all that because what Michael just said was spot on. I think it is great. But they know that I've really been trying to investigate this idea of what it means that our body is a temple. If I were to do a keyword search on that, the only passages that are going to pop up time and again come from the epistles of Shaul. Now, that's not in itself a problem. Now, just because he talks about it doesn't make it wrong. But I'm trying to make a case for the fact that our bodies are a temple throughout Scripture, and I'm not really seeing it very clearly. Some people are going to say that's an oxymoron, that our bodies are temples. I have a lot of questions, because if my body is a temple, I have a lot of questions about clean and unclean laws and all sorts of things. The reason I'm saying this is because I really like what and just so everyone is clear, that I'm in a complete agreement with Kefa says, and also the shepherd of Hermas, about that we are living stones that are being built, which I think it maybe is a little bit different, but I really wanted to concentrate on the idea of what Yahusha says here, sanctuary of his heart. So let's see if I can pull this back up. So in the Textus Receptus, or the Greek Gospel of John, it says this, but he spake of the temple of his body. And of course, the context here is, destroy this, and within 3 days I'll rebuild it. And then it says that he was speaking about the temple of his body. Now, to be fair, in the Hebrew gospel, it does say up here in verse 19, Yeshua answered and said to them, you will cast down this sanctuary, right? He's talking about himself, but in 3 days I will raise it up. All right. But then it clarifies here in verse 21 in the Hebrew gospel says, but what he said about the sanctuary of his heart. All right. So again, some people are going to say tomato, tomato, that they're both the same. I'm really trying to get to the bottom of this here. And what I'm saying is that the condition of the heart is a little bit different than talking about the body. All right. So here's some of the cross-referencing I did that actually connects to my already theory about the circumcised heart being the resurrected body. So we see in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 6 through 8. Now, I could read all of Deuteronomy 30. In fact, I opened up last week, I believe, speaking from Deuteronomy 30. The whole chapter is phenomenal. But specifically here in verse 6 through 8, it says, and Yahuwah Elohika will circumcise your heart, all right, and the heart of your seed to love Yahuwah Elohika with all your heart. So he's circumcising the heart to do what? To love him with all of your heart, with all of your soul, that you may live. And we'll kind of hopefully get a little bit of context of what I think it's talking about, that you may live. All right, verse 7. And Yahuwah Elohika will put all these curses upon your enemies and on them that hate you, which persecuted you. So the blessing and the curse, we see the blessing coming about. Those who love him with all their heart are getting circumcised hearts, and those who chose the curse are now they're getting the curses put upon them. And on them that hate you, which persecuted you. And you shall return and obey the voice of Yahuwah and do all his commandments, which I command you this day. So the reason they're able to do all the commandments is because they have circumcised hearts. They are returning into the land. Now, I think contextually here, what this is talking about, this is a prophecy for when Yehuda and the house of Yashar'el are regathered together. The house of Yashar'el has been spread to the furthest corners of the earth. They are being regathered and brought back into the land. And there is a resurrection happening here, that they are given these new circumcised hearts. What I think is happening is what we also see in Jeremiah chapter 31, which is the famous chapter that talks about the new covenant. This is where, when Matthew turned in his gospel to the publishers, he didn't have on the front page, it didn't say New Testament. I don't know when the New Testament was added at the front of Matthew. It appeared probably, I don't know if it was even there when canon was introduced with the Roman Catholic Church. But everyone assumes that we are all in the new covenant. And as I have made a case in the past, I do believe it has been enacted. I believe that the sign that I am not in the new covenant is that I am not resurrected from the dead. I am still Noel Joshua Hadley, the mortal soul who has very much the ability to sin. But let's see what it actually says here in Jeremiah. Behold, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Yashar'el and the house of Yehuda. So right here we know you have to pick one of the two houses. The covenant is only made with the house of Yehuda or the house of Yashar'el. If you're still a goyim, if you're still a Gentile, and you're obstinately declaring that you're a Gentile, then you're not in the covenant. You got to pick, as Rob Skiba used to say, pick a stick. You got to pick one or the other. And then it goes on to say, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares Yahuwah. And that's a whole another spiel right there on Yahuwah being the husband of Yashar'el. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Yashar'el after those days, declares Yahuwah. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their heart. So here we see the sanctuary of the heart. And I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah. This is one of the pieces of evidences that I show that we are not in the new covenant, because I have my neighbors on either side of me don't even know the name of the Most High. If I tell them it's Yahuwah, they're like, who's Yahuwah, a surfer? They have no clue. Also, the fact that we're all here teaching each other, that we have to go onto YouTube and get instructional videos or whatever. We're learning. is another evidence that I don't believe that we are in the new covenant. The conditions have not been met yet. People still don't know who Yahuwah is. We're still teaching each other. And we will see in John chapter 3 next what it is to be born again in the Spirit. And we will see some of the conditions that are also not met, that I personally as a mortal cannot do what Yahusha describes in John chapter. Moving on. And I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And no longer, okay, I read this. No longer they shall teach each other, know Yahuwah, for they shall all know me. So everybody will know Yahuwah. Why? Because the law, Torah, is written on their heart. From the least of them to the greatest, declares Yahuwah, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. So here we see Yahusha in a very Hebrew gospel now quoting from Jeremiah, but also Deuteronomy, and basically it's almost like Yahusha is the only guy where the law is literally written on his heart. Right? We discussed this a little bit last week. I'm sure it's going to come up again. Yahusha's ability to sin or not to sin. It is my conclusion. I mean, I'm not just saying this to be politically correct, because as you guys know, I never that doesn't really concern me. But I don't believe he had the ability to sin. Okay, it just was not in his nature, and because the law is written on his heart, and he's saying here again that they're gonna just kill him, but he will rebuild the sanctuary of his heart. Right, this new covenant, the Torah written on his heart, it will be built again in 3 days. So I just wanted to point that out. There is, again, some people are going to say tomato, no big difference between the body as the temple or the heart. I'm just saying that the language is more in tune and in line with the Torah and the Tanakh here, all right, and not some of the later epistles that we see. And there was one more thing I wanted to point out before I hand it back over to Rob. Verse 22, it says in the Greek, so I'll read from the Textus Receptus King James Version here. It said, when therefore he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this unto them regarding the fact that his body was a temple. And they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said. All right, so all of that there, it's almost written like some sort of monk, like some sort of a scribe actually added that in as a note, because that's not in the Hebrew. This is what it says in the Hebrew. It simply said, and they believed in the scripture and the word which Yeshua had spoken. When did they believe? They believed it presently, not afterwards. It wasn't after he was resurrected, and they were, it wasn't like his disciples were just following him along, like, bumbling along, going, "Who is this guy we're following?" Like, it's like, no, like as Rob said earlier, they were sold. They believed this was the Messiah. They believed what he said. They weren't bumbling idiots. They knew the scripture. They had read it their entire lives. These guys were literate people. They could read, they could spell, they could write letters. They were educated, despite being fishermen. And when he was speaking, they were able to connect that with the Tanakh and with the Torah. They believed presently as he said it. So I just wanted to point out there that for me, that's a really big difference between, the Greek and the Hebrew. Let me give you guys an example. This would be kind of I'll try not to do this too often, use Hollywood or worldly examples. But just this week, Sylvester Stallone released Rocky IV, the director's cut. He calls it now Rocky versus Drago. All right. And what he essentially did, if anyone, probably everyone here is familiar with Rocky IV to some degree. It was in the series. It came out in 1985. Famously, Rocky ends the Cold War. But the whole movie it felt like an MTV music video, where it was just all these like montages of like music, is like Sylvester Stallone's driving in his car with flashbacks, and it's like music playing, and there wasn't much plot. So he redid the whole film, and I decided I did watch it this week, and it was really interesting because he edited all that stuff out, and he made this very raw cut. But it's amazing how the way when you write a story or something like this, just this little cut here and there, little additions of words and sentences, or removing something radically changes how we see the entire story, the same story, but it changes our perspective. And so, what I'm seeing here already, we're in the second chapter, and I'm seeing that the disciples were not the bumbling idiots that I grew up thinking they were, that they just didn't get it. Oh, how could they not get it? No, they got it. They understood it. They believed. They were literate and knew what was in the scripture. All right. So, with that, I'll hand it back over to Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. I think I had that highlighted and I didn't even mention it, but I'm glad you did because the key factor there on verse 22 was when. And that's a time marker. So just like you said, in the Greek, that time marker is placed after he was raised from the dead, where in the Hebrew here, it's not even there. So the time marker is now. Okay, I am going to read chapter 3 to verse 13. Does that sound good? That breaks that one up for the next part. If you guys are okay with that.
Rob, Rob, what if you just the entire chapter is just one section, right? Would you like to just read the whole chapter?
Yeah, I can. No problem. All right. Okay, so there was another man whose name was Nick. I'm gonna say Nicodemus or Nick. Well, I'll say this, Nicodeme. There was another man whose name was Nicodeme, demon, and he was a leader of the Yahudim. And in the night he came unto Yeshua and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you came from the heavens, for no man is able to do these signs except El be with him. Yeshua answered and said to him, Truth I say to you, no man will reach to see the kingdom of heavens except he become born anew. Nicodemus answered him, How is a man able to be born when he is old? Is a man able to return to his mother's belly and come into the world again? Yeshua answered, Truth I say to you, no man will enter into the kingdom of heavens except he who becomes born again of water and of Ruach HaKodesh. That which is born from the flesh is flesh, but that which is born from the Ruach is Ruach. Do not be astonished because I say it is necessary that you become born anew. The Ruach blows to the place where it wants, and you hear the sound, but you do not know where it comes or goes. And so is the man who is born from the Ruach. Nicodemus answered and said to him, How can these things be possible? Yeshua answered and said to him, You are a rabbi in Israel, yet you do not know these things? Truth I say to you that we speak what we know, and we do witness of what we have seen, but you do not accept our witnesses. If I tell you worldly things and you do not believe them, how will you believe the heavenly things if I tell you of them? And there is no one who has ascended up to the heavens except he who descended from the heavens, the Son of Man who is from the heavens. As Moshe lifted up and exalted the serpent in the wilderness, so it is obligated that the Son of Man be lifted up, in order that the sons of man who believe in him will not perish, but reach everlasting life. For El loves the world so much that he gave his only Son, one alone begotten, to the world, in order that he who believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. For Eloah did not send his Son into the world in order to judge the world, but in order that the world may be saved through him. Whosoever believes in him will not be judged, but whoever does not believe in him is already judged, because he does not believe in the eternal, the one alone begotten Son of Eloah. And this is the appearance of the heart. The lamp came to the world, but the men loved darkness and gloom more than the lamp, for their deeds are evil. For every man who does the evil curses the lamp, and he is not in the light, so that he will not be caught in his deeds. But whosoever does truth comes into the lamp in order that his deeds may be revealed, that they are done in the name of El. After these things, Yeshua came with his Talmudim in the land of Yehuda, and there he stayed with them and immersed. Now Yochanan was immersing by the mountain near Shalem, for there was much water there, and many came unto him, and he immersed them, for Yochanan had not yet been placed in the house of prison. Then a question occurred among the Talmudim of Yochanan concerning the purification. So they came to Yochanan and said, Rabbi, he who was with you on the other side of the Yarden, of whom you did witness, he immerses, and everyone comes unto him. Yochanan answered and said, No man is able to obtain unless it is given to him from the heavens. You yourselves do witness to me that I told you, I am not the Mashiach, but I am sent before him. He who has the betrothed woman is the betrothed man. But this is the friend of the betrothed man, he who stands and hears him, and is glad with joy because of the voice of the betrothed man. And it is fitting to give him the greatness, but me the smallness. Whosoever comes for esteem from everyone is he who speaks from the earth, but he who comes from the heavens is above all. And he does witness of what he heard and saw, yet no man receives his witness. But whosoever receives his witness signifies that he is the true Eloah. For he whom Yahweh has sent speaks the word, for Yahweh does not give the Ruach with measure. The Father loves the Son, and he gave everything in his hand. And whosoever believes in the Son has everlasting life. However, whosoever does not believe the Son does not have life, but the anger of Yahweh abides on him.
I think I'm up next.
Michael, yes?
Yeah, for commentary. Okay, so if we're doing the whole chapter, I have a lot, guys, so bear with me here.
Apologies, guys. When Rob started reading, I was like, "Oh yeah, it is 2 sections." I was thinking it was just Nicodemus. So, anyways, go ahead. No more interruptions on my part.
Oh, no problem at all. So we're going to start with verse 3, and Josh pointed it out in the chat. Yeshua answered and said to him, "Truth I say to you, no man will reach to see the kingdom of heavens except to be born anew." And so I want to talk about the reaching into the kingdom of heaven, and it reminded me kind of like a Tower of Babel, where you can't reach it by building a tower or CERN, and as we'll see later, you must be resurrected. And ironically, I actually looked in the Hebrew Strong's for reach is 4291, and the actual word is meta, and I thought that was really interesting with Facebook. So I don't know if they're trying to do it via technology or something like that, but 4291 is meta in Hebrew, and I just thought of Facebook, and it's perfect timing. All right, the next thing is number 5. So, all right, so in the Greek, it's saying kingdom of God, but in the Hebrew, it's talking about the kingdom of heavens. And so the phrase kingdom of God occurs 68 times in 10 different New Testament books. This is in the Greek, while the kingdom of heaven only occurs 32 times, and only in the Gospel of Matthew. So I just wanted to point out, and Matthew's considered probably the most Hebrew of the synoptics, right? Quote unquote, written to the Jews. But the Hebrew, John, says kingdom of heaven. So I just wanted to point that out, that the Greek, says kingdom of God more times. The next thing, and I didn't say that at the beginning, but Noel, I agree with you that we are not, in my opinion, in the new covenant yet. You have to be resurrected. Number 8, the Ruach blows to the place where it wants, and you hear the sound, but you do not know where it comes or goes. and so is the man who is born from the Ruach. So basically, this is one of the proofs I would say that we're not born again yet until the resurrection. So we're not blowing and we're not going and coming and going wherever we want to. We're not teleporting anywhere. This would be one of my proofs that we have a renewed heart. We're circumcising our own heart, but we're not truly born again until the resurrection. Number 13. So I just have I don't know, I'm blinded by this, I guess, but I'm going to need you guys to explain. So number 13, and there was no one who ascended up to heaven except he who descended from the heavens. So when you guys have your turn, can you just help me understand that with Enoch and Elijah? How could John say this?
I'm on it.
Okay. Awesome. All right, great. Okay, so the next thing is number 14. So, and Moshe lifted up and exalted the serpent in the wilderness. So it is obligated that the Son of Man be lifted up. So obligated is different. It's not mentioned in the Greek. Obligation is 632 in the Strongs, and it's a bond, a binding obligation. And it occurs 11 times in the Old Testament, and every single time it's in Numbers 30. And Numbers 30 is all talking about vows. And I'm not going to read all of them, but I will read Numbers 30:16, which summarizes it. So these are the statutes with which the Lord commanded Moses concerning matters between a man and his wife, and between a father and his daughter, while she is in her youth in her father's house. I'm just throwing out the thought that, does this have something to do with the bride narrative or the bride story? Did he have to, this was part of his obligation, his vow, his bond, that he had to be lifted up in order to save Israel. Also on 14, I noticed, so John actually says Yeshua will be lifted up 3 times. This is only 1 time. The other 2 times are in John 8:28. So Yeshua said, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am, and I do nothing on my own, but I say these things as the Father instructed me. And then also in John 12:32, and I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. So I thought that was interesting. That this is just 1 time where John mentions that Yeshua is lifted up. The next thing is on number 15. So let's read that. In order that the sons of man who believe in him will not perish, but reach everlasting life. And I'm assuming it's the same Hebrew word for reach that was in number 3. Where am I? Okay. So yeah, and then in the Greek, this was the first time eternal was mentioned in John. It occurs 17 times. The Hebrew uses everlasting here, but uses eternal in John chapter 1, if we recall. That was one of the differences. So I just thought that was interesting that it took a while for the Greek to use the word eternal, where John used it in John chapter 1, and they chose a different word here. So I don't know what that means, but I thought that was interesting. So also I want to point out in 15 that, whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. But, I always like to point out James 2:19, thou believest that one God is, thou doest well, but even the devils believe and together tremble. So, as we all know, it's as I think Pam put in the comment section, belief is, an action. Number 17. So, for Eloha did not send his son into the world in order to judge the world, but in order that the world may be saved through him. And I have a nice parallel in John 12:47. If any man heareth my words and keepeth them not, I deem him not. And if any man shall hear my words and shall not keep, I deem not him. For I came not that I deem the world, but that I make the world safe. So that was interesting. Like, it's kind of a cross-reference, and it's equating deeming with judging and making the world safe with salvation. Okay, so this is another question I have for you guys on number 18. So, whosoever believes in him will not be judged, but whosoever does not believe in him is already judged, because he does not believe in the eternal, the one alone begotten Son of Eloha. What do you guys think of already being judged? Is that literally just you're dead in your sin? You're already judged unless you repent, unless you turn to him. And
Yeah, I mean that would be my conclusion as well. That would be my natural default go-to conclusion. That we're already judged in our sin.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. And then that's also, because everybody deserves to die. We've all sinned. So that's where the grace comes in, and that's where we will be pardoned of our sin. And that's why the blaspheming the Ruach is the only unpardonable sin. So he's a judge, he will be pardoning us. And that's why we won't be judged. There will be no sentence, right? So the next thing I have is number 19. So, and this is the appearance of the heart. So another reference to the heart, and the lamp came to the world, but the men loved darkness and gloom more than the lamp, for their deeds are evil. I just wanted to point out the difference between appearance of the heart and condemnation. And I guess it kind of goes with what I was saying earlier with the body as the temple. And I wanted to quote 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For Yah does not see as man sees, since man looks at the outward appearance, but Yah looks at the heart. So I just wanted to make that relevant as well. So I also want to point out darkness and gloom, and I made a note of that in John chapter 1, and it also mentions that here. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. So darkness and gloom, as I mentioned in chapter 1, was talking about his coming, and the lamp will, overtake that, and it pretty much says the same thing here. The men love darkness, but the lamp came to the world. Okay, so the next thing is John 3:20. So the cross-reference. So for every man does evil curses the lamp, and he is not in the light, so that he will not be caught in his deeds. And I found an awesome cross-reference. So this would be Proverbs 20:20. He who curses his father or mother, his lamp will go out in time of darkness. I don't know what to make of that, but I just thought that was a great parallel. What if you're cursing your father and mother? I guess if you're cursing Yah, his lamp will go out in time of darkness. So I thought that was a good cross-reference. So I have 4 left. Number 21. So, but whosoever does truth comes into the lamp, in order that his deeds may be revealed, that they are done in the name of El. And there's no cross-reference here. I just wanted to point out that this is done in the name of. A lot of people say, I came in the name of, but I just want to say that the Torah is the truth. So, but whoever does the truth is doing it in Yah's name. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So the next thing is 27. Yochanan answered and said, no man is able to obtain unless it is given to him from the heavens. And the cross-reference would be James 1:17. Each good gift, each perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom none is other changing, nor outward overshadowing of reward. So, appreciate the gifts that you're given, because they come from the Father. No one is able to obtain unless it is given to him from the heavens. 2 left. Number 30. So let's see. And it is fitting to give him the greatness, but me the smallness. Again, I just want to point out John's humility, like we did last week. Like, it's just amazing how humble he is. And it's way different than the Greek. Let's see, where am I? So the Greek says, he must increase, I must decrease. To me, it just sounds better, in the Hebrew. And it is fitting to give him the greatness, but me the smallness. So again, I just want to highlight John's humility. Strong 6994 for smallness, katon, Qaton, to be small or insignificant. I found a decent cross-reference, Genesis 32:9. Then Jacob said, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your relatives, and I will make you prosper. And here's where it is. If I am unworthy of all the favor and all your faithfulness, which you have shown to your servant, for with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, now I will become 2 companies. I just want to show that Jacob he felt so unworthy of that. And it appears to me that, John, he did his role, but he was so humble and felt unworthy. I just hope that we can do that as well. Humble ourselves like that. And finally, this is the last thing I have. On 36, and whosoever believes in the Son has everlasting life. However, whosoever does not believe the Son does not have life, but the anger of Yahweh abides in him. So, a lot of people use John 3:16 to promote lawlessness. I always go to this verse, which is 20 verses later, that says you can believe all you want, but if you're not doing, you will not have life, and the anger of Yah will abide on you. So I'll just end it there, and I hope you enjoyed it. My commentary. I'll give it up to Noel now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for ending on that note, because I was going to touch on that John 3:16 is one of probably the most wrangled, abused verses in all of Scripture. And now it's a amazing verse, and we will probably all memorize that as a child. But as Pam earlier pointed out in the chat, belief is an action, right? It is faithfulness, not just faith. And so this is something that people go, oh yeah, but I believe on Jesus. It's like, okay, well, and as you pointed out, Michael, even the demons believe and shudder. The thing is, though, is that I always try to ask people, well, okay, you say you believe on Jesus, but what do you believe? Because do you believe he historically existed? When they said, of course. You believe he's the Son of the Most High? And they'll be like, of course, right? And you believe he died for your sins? And they'll be like, of course. But it's like, okay, so my theme verse here at the Unexpected Cosmology is Revelation 14:12, which says it tells us those who are written in the book of life, or rather at the very end of time, not scrubbed from the book of life, and it is those who keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahusha. So when we're talking about belief, that whoever believes on him, it is belief on his testimony as well, not just who he says he is, but what he says to do. And we know that he is the Word, the Word of Yahuwah. He is the one that gave Torah, that he spoke it. And so if I believe that he is who he says he is, then I need to be obedient to what he says to do. And that is how people really wrangle this. And they think that belief is enough, and you're not supposed to don't do anything. Don't if you're doing anything to be obedient, you're now in danger of spitting on the cross. You're in danger of his sacrifice being null and void, because you've done something to be obedient. And that is, I can't say that enough, because it is the stupidest thing that anyone can say, and it is rehearsed, regurgitated from the pulpits and down into the pews, and people go around thumping head with that whole ideology, and it just makes absolutely no sense. It has no coherence anywhere in Scripture. All right, so if we believe that he is the Messiah, if we believe he is the Son of the Most High, then we had better do what he says. All right, and there is nowhere where he says, guys, if you want into the kingdom of heaven, don't try. Don't do anything. Don't read the book. Don't do what it says. Go on the broad path, or it just whatever. So you guys see the point I'm trying to make. Right. Let's dive back into the chapter 3 here. There is a stunning difference in verse 2.
You keep cutting out.
Between the Greek and the Hebrew. On what is being said here by Nicodemus. In the Greek, he says this, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher, Elohim, for no man can do these miracles that thou doest except Elohim be with him. All right? Okay, sounds better. Okay. All right. So there's a big, now Nicodemus in the Greek, if I'm reading this right, he defines for us what it means that he came from Elohim. He says Elohim's with him. You came from Elohim because Elohim, Elohim is with him. However, in the Hebrew, it says here, now he's, again, Nicodemus is, okay, I'll just cut off my video. Okay, is it a little bit better now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm connected again. How's it going, guys? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna pop in my video again. Hopefully it's not gonna get choppy. If it gets choppy again, just let me know. All right. There is a the technical issues of being live and giving these discussions. All the things that can go wrong. So here in the Hebrew, it's a little bit more, if I can use the word, damning, because Nicodemus is, coming it under the cover of night. Okay, he's not. It's pointed here that it's not in the daytime. He doesn't want his fellow Pharisees to know about what he's doing, and he says this because he's being like an unofficial representative here for the group, and he says, "We know that you came from the heavens," which is very different than saying that he came from Elohim. Because again, I was a little choppy there, so I'm just going to repeat this. That he defined what it was to come from Elohim by saying Elohim is with him. All right, that's in the Greek. But here in the Hebrew, he's saying he came from the heavens. Now, I find it really fascinating that heavens here is used in the plural. Now, again, I'm not reading the original Hebrew, I'm reading the English translation, but I do find that really interesting. I was taking notes here as Rob was reading, and heavens is used plural, verse 2, verse 5, verse 13, verse 27, and verse 31. So in the same passage, Yochanan the Baptist is also saying the heavens. And what this reminded me of is what we were going through with the ascension of Isaiah, where Yahusha is literally coming through the heavens, okay, multiple. Now, on a basic cosmology, we know that there is the sky, the clouds, that's kind of the heavens. And then there is the solid firmament over that, a big dome with waters above. And that's, that can be seen as the second heaven, and then heaven on above. I'm wondering, though, that if that's not necessarily what this is referring to, that this is actually referring to a multi-stacked heavenly system where you have as many as 7 heavens on top of each other. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not going to go reading through the Ascension of Isaiah right now, but anyone who has been following my research and work, and I'm actually preparing a paper on this now, the seventh heaven, that really stuck out to me as Rob was reading. All right, so and Michael already covered this, but I did want to point out again verses 5 through 8, this idea of being born again. Baptists love this. It's their axiom. They'll ask you, are you born again? And they want you to give the actual dates of when you were born again. And they will also use this as proof that once you are born again, you can never be unborn. So it is your security. Like, you've been born again on this date, so you're secure. You're good to go, because it's impossible to be unborn, right? Well, and yet, Michael already covered this, but it's like, wait a second. Yahusha defines for us what it is to be born again. The Ruach blows to the place where it wants, and you hear the sound, but you do not know where it comes and goes. And he says it here, just in case you guys are wondering. He says, and so is the man who is born from Ruach. So I would ask anyone here listening, are you able to blow to the place where you want? And you hear the sound, but you do not know where, or people don't know where you're coming or going from, because you're born again. Now, I'm not being mocking here. I'm just pointing out that once again, we see a reference to the new covenant. Okay, the person born again, they are a spirit body now. For you and for me, anyone listening to this in YouTube land, we are mortal flesh. There might be immortal spirits listening in, but Noel Joshua Hadley is not. I'm not born again. To a Baptist, that's going to sound like, I'm not saved, but that's how I'm defining it right here. All right. So verse 13, I want to go back to what Michael was talking about. He asked the question about, I would just ask this the other day. This is one of the big things that will discredit the book of Enoch, Second Baruch. It's not just Enoch. There's multiple books where people ascend up to heaven. Even Elijah, the idea that he was taken up in a there was a chariot of fire and he was taken up, and I will agree with people who argue against him being taken up, that he actually it does appear that he wasn't taken in the chariot of fire. That's just it doesn't really matter. He was taken up. There was a chariot of fire. All right. So they will quote this verse from verse 13. Let me pull this up and read it again so I get it right. And there is, so it reads the same way in the Greek and Hebrew pretty much here, except for the fact that once again, Yahusha is saying the heavens, and I think that this context here gives a stronger argument that we're talking about the multi-stacked, like seven firmaments on top of each other, that we're not just talking about the sky, because many of us have gone up to the heaven of the clouds. We've all been in planes and so on and so forth. And that would discredit this verse. And I think he's talking about something else. But anyways, all right, going back to what he says, verse 13. And there is no one who has ascended up to the heavens except he who descended from the heavens, the Son of Man who is from the heavens. Now, this verse alone right here, it sounds like he's saying, like, sorry guys, you thought Enoch went up, you thought Elijah went up, Eliyahu, sorry, they didn't really go up. But that's not what he's saying here. He's talking about, the context is that if he were to, that Nicodemus doesn't even understand earthly matters. He's like, look, if you don't understand earthly matters, how are we? He actually uses the word we here. How are we going to teach you about spiritual matters? Okay, I lost my, so in verse 11, he says that they do not accept their witness. Furthermore, in verse 12, he speaks of teaching earthly things, or earthly and heavenly things. What he's saying is there is nobody who ascended to heaven in Ruach who is teaching them these things except he who descended from heaven. There's really no reason to overcomplicate what he's saying. At least it makes perfect sense to me in the flow of sentences when you take them all together. And he's giving here the context of being born again and the Spirit being able to travel around and go where it wants. But he's speaking to an audience who they are in their bodies, they are fleshly, and yeah. All right. So that's how I would explain that. That he's not saying that nobody has ever ascended up. He's saying that nobody has descended to teach them these things, but that he came down from the heavens to teach them this stuff. Eliyahu, he left, he's gone. Enoch, he left, he's gone. Multiple other people that left, they're gone. They ascended to heaven. They haven't descended back to teach them, or what have you. All right. Okay, I made a note here on verse 14. So, oh yeah, this is really good. And I don't have I don't really have much thoughts on this, but I just wanted to point this out. So going into the famous John 3:16, before you get there, we talk about Moshe lifting the pole in the wilderness. And the Greek says, and as man lifted up this, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. All right. So it says, and even so. Here in the Hebrew, it says that as Moshe lifted up and exalted the serpent in the wilderness, so it is obligated that the Son of Man be lifted up. I thought that was really interesting. It's like Moshe did this, and because Moshe did this, I am now obligated to do this. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I don't even have any thoughts on that other than the fact that it seemed that he was obligated to do it, to be lifted up on the, hung from the tree, because Moshe did that. So I'll let you guys think through that and come up to your own conclusions. So again, I didn't do the word study like Michael did on the word reach, but I find that really interesting because again, we see so many people just twisting and contorting this idea of what it is to believe, that all you need is belief, guys. Just believe that Jesus came and he died. And that's it. Don't go beyond that. Don't try. don't try to be good, because that goes against the very reason why he came. And it's just, again, I that's the most, I'm sorry for using this word, but it's the most idiotic thing I ever hear. And this is what the church has been sold into believing. Well, the word that's being used multiple times in this chapter is reach, to reach eternal life, right? It's something you're it's an action, right? Versus you're just given it, versus you are capable of reaching it. John, let me see here. In my opinion, this is consistent with Matthew 10:22, which says, "He that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved." The person who endures until the end is reaching for eternal life, right? He believes, and because he believes, there is an action that he is going to endure until the end. So he has a right now to reach for it, only because if he believes. Because if he doesn't believe, he's not going to endure until the end. There would be no reason for him to endure until the end, because he has no belief. All right. So, and once again in 3:19, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rob. I have more notes on Johann the Baptist after this. But once again, we see the appearance of the heart. And I was talking about this the sanctuary of his heart. We're seeing a lot of the same themes just play throughout. And this is the appearance of the heart. The lamp came to the world, but the men loved darkness and gloom more than the lamp, and their deeds are evil. So that's kind of in your face there. If this is like, oh, all you need is belief, you just need belief in the lamp, guys. If you have belief in the lamp, you won't be in the darkness. But it's like, no, like their deeds are evil. All right, they're people with good works. Okay, well, good works come from the belief in the light, the lamp. All right. So I'll just kind of end that there. I'll turn it back over to Rob, and good.
Okay. All right. I will. I'm going to touch on verse 5. I like this doing this because we're all pointing out things that the other has not, or at least confirming it. Okay, so verse 5 here we have Yeshua answered, "True, I say to you, no man will enter into the kingdom of heavens except that one is born again of water and the Ruach HaKodesh." I just wanted to point out that Yahusha describes entering into the kingdom of heavens with qualifiers. We have the water and the Ruach HaKodesh. And obviously, the water represents the baptism of repentance, and the spirit, uh, the baptism of spirit and fire from above. So I just wanted to reinforce that statement. And then on verse 7, do not be astonished because I say it is necessary you become born anew. Um, born anew. In when you read in Acts 2:38, it's talking about repenting, turning, and changing of mind, and be baptized that you may receive the gift of the set apart Spirit. So him describing this is understanding that what that born again terminology means. And so I just wanted to bring in Acts 2:38 that's defining it. But on verse 8, where it talks about the ruach blowing different places, you don't know where it's coming or going, and then we address that the man who is born from the ruach also, and I will address that. But I'm going to talk first about where does the spirit dwell? All right. So if it's going wherever it's going, and we do not know where, but the scriptures gives us some understanding at least on where the spirit focus and dwelling is to be. Not exactly the details of what it's doing and where it's going within it, but it's giving us, it definitely outlines where the Ruach dwells. We see that the Ruach is going where she wants. We also know that she's obedient to the Most High's will, because in Sirach 24:8 it talks about she dwells within the tabernacle of Israel, known as wisdom. And in Matthew 15:24, it says, Yahusha answered, I wasn't sent to anyone but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So here, the Ruach tabernacles in Israel only was given a command by the Most High to do so. We have the Son who's telling us that he was sent he was sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I wasn't sent to anyone but them. John 15:16 says, and this is Yahusha speaking, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatever you will ask of the Father in my name, I will give you. So here's Yahusha speaking that he's choosing. He's choosing the people and appointing them uh, for his will, for them to bear fruit, the house of Israel. Then we go to Jeremiah 1:5, and now we're talking Yah speaking here, and this is talking to Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the womb, to Jeremiah, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. So here's an example of Yah choosing ahead of time someone and uh, sanctifying them for a purpose. And then also with Yah, we read in Psalms 106:4 and 5, remember me, Yahweh, with the favor that you show to your people, visit me with your salvation. This is David writing, I believe. That I may see the prosperity of your chosen, that I may rejoice in gladness of your nation, that I may glory with your inheritance. So, with those verses there, we see that the Spirit, the Son, and the Father, all of them are dwelling and choosing, focused, appointed, calling the house of Israel. So, so with that, you see all three of them doing that. But with the Ruach, it mentions that she dwells in the house of Israel. So that's where she resides in man, but it doesn't give us the details as far as where she goes to and fro and here and there and all that. No, but I'm just giving a little context of what we do know about the Ruach. Then when it comes to the part where it says, and not that I disagree with you guys, but interpret the scriptures this way, because it can be either or, that where it says the man know not where he comes and goes when the spirit's in him. I think that's referring to Proverbs 16:9. A man's heart plans his course, but Yahweh directs his steps. So I think that those of us who are walking in the spirit, we're being directed by him. And that's what it means on the physical side for us to be moving in the spirit. He's directing our path. Yeah, we're not going to teleport. We're not going to do any of that type of stuff. That easily. I mean, who knows? Maybe someone can or will. We read about Philip and others, but uh, that's how I interpreted the man when it talks about the man when filled with the Spirit, when he comes and goes. So if you are walking in the Spirit, you will find yourself doing things you may not have expected. So if you're walking in humility and you're walking in obedience and you're asking Yah to lead you and direct you, you may find out you're end up doing things that you would never thought you would have done. You helped someone out, you've done some task, you were led to call somebody, do something unexpected, and then you look back and go, that was Yah. So that's the spirit moving within us, and that's what I think it was referring mainly to. Um, then I'll go into 18. 18 was another one. So verse 18, whosoever believes in him will not be judged, but whosoever does not believe in him, that's what I'm going to talk about, is already judged because he does not believe in the eternal, the one and only begotten Son of Elohim. Regarding unbelief, I want to bring up some scriptures that kind of give some depth to that. Hebrews 3, 7, and 8. Therefore, as the Ruach HaKodesh says, yeah, this is the Ruach speaking here. Today, if you hear her voice, do not hearken your hearts as in the rebellion in the day of trials in the wilderness. There your fathers tried me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Therefore I was grieved with the generation and said, they always go astray in their heart, and they have not known my ways. As I swore in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest. Look out, brothers, lest there be in any of you a wicked heart of unbelief in falling away from the living Elohim. So this is pointing out that these are the children taken out of Egypt, from the slavery, out of the wilderness, and that generation, they grieve the Ruach. I mean, when you read the Targums, you see that the pillar cloud was representative of the Ruach Hakodesh, and in mentioning that with the Spirit, and so here we have the Spirit uh, being grieved by the people, and in their hearts they're doing this. And we've talked about the heart issue, and that's why I believe it starts within the heart, and the decisions come from the heart. Everything produced and is sprouted from the heart, and so we have to protect that heart. We have to do those things to strengthen our faith, so we do not lose or have unbelief in our walk. So I just wanted to point that out. In regards to the children of Israel and what they went through in coming to unbelief, that many of them we saw fell away, worshiped other idols. They did all of these things that they should not have done. Then I want to point 21, and I think that's all I'll touch on. Yeah, I'm just going to do on 21. But whoever does truth comes into the lamp in order that his deeds may be revealed, that they are done in the name of El. Okay, whoever does truth. What is truth? I know I struggled with that years back in the teachings I was in before. What exactly is the truth to distinguish and understand? I'm going to read some verses that will outline this. John 14:6. Yahusha said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So here we see Yahusha is the truth. He's declaring he is the truth. John 17:17. Sanctify them in truth. Your word is truth. So whether you want to take that word as Yahusha or the Torah, either way, it is the truth. Your word. The Father's word, your word is the truth. Psalms 119, 142. Your righteousness is righteousness forever, and your Torah is truth. So there, we tie in the Son, the Torah, the Word is truth. John 16:13. When the Spirit of truth comes, she will guide you in all truth. She will not speak on her own authority, but whatever she hears, she will speak, and she will declare to you the things that are to come. So we have a spirit of truth. The Ruach is the spirit of truth. So we have the Son, we have the word Torah, the Ruach. Psalm 43:3. Oh, send out your light and your truth. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy hill, to your tents. So you see all three of them that are there. So when we talk about what is truth, it is the Torah, it is Yahusha, it is the Father, it is the Ruach. When we're talking about the truth, so we have to come to this understanding of of the of doing the truth and doing what is commanded by Yah, what Yahusha says. He's always pointing to the Father, the Father's will, the Father's commands, and the Ruach. We same with the Ruach. And then I wanted to end with Psalms 25:10. All paths of Yahweh are loving commitment and truth. So all paths of Yahweh are loving commitment and truth to those who guard his covenant and his witnesses. So that's giving us an understanding. Yah is supporting the Torah, which is supporting the Son, which is supporting the Ruach. So we're tying all of this in the truth. So, I don't know if that helps anybody. When I know 10 years ago, I didn't see this at all. It was just, whatever Jesus said. So now I just want to bring all this together to have a better understanding of when we're talking truth, what that means in the aspect of all of the quote holy family. So that was all I wanted to add, Noel. And from there, I will pass it on.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Mike, if there's anything you want to say. It's amazing that we're going over these. I feel like we're just skimming through these two chapters, and Michael, Rob, and I are all trying to keep this within a 2-hour time frame. There's so much here to talk about. There's just a couple more observations I'll throw in here. One is that Rob, you had said how he talked about in the name of El. Well, interestingly, in the Hebrew here, we see the name of the Most High given 3 different times. Yochanan the Baptist actually says Yahuwah. In verses, let's see here, 34, he says it twice, and then again in 36. For he whom Yahuwah had sent speak the word, for Yahuwah does not give the Ruach with measure. In the Greek, it just says, I would assume Yah or some variation of it, because we read God. So, later on, when Yahusha is in the garden and he's praying on the night he's betrayed, he prays. He said something along the lines, and we'll get there. I don't have it in front of me, but he says that I came to declare your name. And I find that when I started learning about what his name was, I found that really interesting because I don't read his name in the Gospels. So I'm like, well, that's odd. Like I just got the feeling like it was kind of cut out for some way. And there's some things in here that I'm just, again, I don't want to just come at this like whoever was translating this into Greek was being malicious in any way, but it really is interesting. Some of these very Hebrew things we're seeing in here are cut out. One of them, for example, is lamp. We see throughout that Yahusha is a lamp. That is John or Yohanan the Baptist says it again in, it doesn't matter where he says it, but verse 19. Okay, I'm sorry. So Yohanan the Baptist is speaking here, it's Yahusha, but he says the lamp came to the world, and whereas in the Greek it says the light. Now, again, apples, oranges, whatever, right? The thing is, though, is that when I read lamp, I'm envisioning a menorah, right? I'm envisioning like something very, very Hebrew. The lamp that is reminding us of the Moedim, keeping the Sabbath, the feast of Yah. And so when you're now taking this out, when you're taking the lamp and you say, well, I'm going to take out lamp, I'm just going to put light in here. We now lose all these aspects. And you could see how naturally the Goyim, who, aren't really interested in being brought in to the house of Yashar'el, being grafted in, they're just naturally not going to see all this stuff. And they're not going to see the importance of the Moedim and keeping the feast of Yah. So just wanted to throw that in there. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add before we open this up to anybody who has any questions?
Nothing else to add, but I did have a question. Now that we had a week to think about it, and you're mentioning possible maliciousness. The the Passover lamb. Did you give any thoughts to that? Why they removed it in the Hebrew?
Well, so the thing is that I'm coming at the perspective here that this is um, the Hebrew came before the Greek. All right. Now, this Hebrew text we have doesn't necessarily mean it came from the original hand of Yohanan. This could have been the 100th copy made, and maybe he did say lamb originally, and for whatever reason, this copy that we have, it wasn't there, and it carried over into the Greek. That is a very real possibility. But I don't know. I don't know. That's something I had mentioned last week, that if we ever, because I am sold on the fact that Revelation, same author, Yohanan, he wrote that in Hebrew. All right, that was not written in Greek. And so if we, yeah, I think what is it? Revelation, is it 6? I'm not sure which chapter it is, but when the Lamb sets before the throne, if we ever do get our hands on the Hebrew Revelation and that Lamb's not there, I'll be like, what is going on? That's my only thought on that.
That was great. I think we have a question in the chat. Rebecca, she added.
Yeah, Rebecca asked, can you expound more on the menorah? I know nothing about it, and I was, of course, envisioning a different kind of lamp. I generally think that any time within the Hebrew culture that you're describing a lamp. Okay, so like think of Psalms 119, 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. You could actually translate that. In fact, the Sefer does. When we say word, thy Torah is a lamp unto my feet. Well, the lamp that's described in Torah, uh, there's a lot that could be said on the lamp, the menorah, but it is 7 pronged. There is 3, I think 3. I can't say candlesticks, because my understanding of candles is that the waxy candles, as they were invented in Egypt, not necessarily Hebrew. Wrong if the Hebrews, in my opinion, if they used waxy candles. In fact, my menorah at home, we do use candles. I would love to get an oil lamp, but you would have 3. Think of like a tree, and it's like a single stem going up, and then you've got 3 branches coming out on each side, making a total of 7. The modern Judaism, they use a menorah that I think has 9, so 4 on each side, 1 in the middle, and they're adding. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're adding Hanukkah in there, and I'm not sure what other one they're adding in there, but they're not. Hanukkah is not a feast that we find in Torah. That was added later in the religion of Judaism, and so the menorah, it points to the a lot of things. I mean, people see the zodiac in it, but it points to the 7 feasts of Yah. All right, the 7 times that we are to approach them throughout the year. It's divided in 2 parts. You have the spring and the autumn. So you start with Passover, which is the 14th day of the new year, the 14th of Nisan. That then goes into unleavened bread, and then to Pentecost, and then you have the fall feast, which I think everyone has now officially ended the fall feast. It goes with Yom Teruah, which is the Feast of Trumpets. In Judaism, they would call that Rosh Hashanah, and then it goes into the Day of Atonement on the 10th of the month. Yom Teruah is the first, the 10th is Atonement, and then you have Sukkot. All right. So this is what the menorah is, but the menorah also is a representation of the tree of life. I love that, because you have like the Christmas tree, which is a representation of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And you have the menorah, which is, everything else is the knockoff of the tree of life, right? So the menorah, it just has so much symbolism all throughout Scripture. And it was Rob and Michael who pointed out a couple months back, that also the Ruach HaKodesh is the tree of life. And when we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, well, where does the fruit come from? It comes from the tree of life. We see in the book of Revelation that there are 12 fruit throughout the year. That is, you can go up on any given month, and there'll be one fruit of the 12 that are being, are ripe and ready to be eaten from the tree. So again, it's all throughout. So whenever you're seeing about how Yeshua is the light, of the lamp. That's what I think about. And so far, every single time I have seen the instance of the lamp spoken of in the Hebrew Gospel of John, it is replaced with light. Now, again, the translators, they had the right idea. A lamp gives light into darkness, but it it's very different. I very different than the idea of a lamp. So hopefully that answered that question. Okay, so Rob put in a few notes here, so I'll go ahead. Rob, do you want it? What do you want to talk about them?
No,
Okay,
I just pulled that from some information I had, and I can't remember where I got it from, but I just dropped it in there as some interesting information on the menorah.
okay.
Does Pamela want to talk about the Hebrew?
Pam, would you like to jump in? Does anyone else have any questions?
Sorry, it took me a while to unmute. I was just going to say that I had an excerpt from Revelation, and I kind of put it in the chat, and it does say in Revelation, menorah. That comes from Nehemiah Gordon, if any of you know who he is, and it shows in the book of Revelation when it's talking about the 7 lamps, it actually says 7 menorah right there.
Now, in what context are we talking about? The Greek here?
No, this is Hebrew. I posted the Hebrew in there.
Okay, because the only thing I've seen with the Hebrew revelation is that I've seen like some obscure, like the first 3 chapters floating around. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Because I've never seen a completed book of Revelation, but that's cool to know that it's menorah. Yeah, and just to give you the context on that, Rebecca, is that we see Yahusha as our high priest in the book of Revelation, and he's speaking to the 7 churches. So there you have another reference to the menorah, the 7 branches. And there's a lot of 7s, right? There's 7 days of the week. There's 7 ruachs that proceed from the Father, one of which is wisdom, the Ruach HaKodesh. She is one of the 7 spirits that proceed. And Yahusha is our high priest. He's our king and our high priest. And I love that scene in Revelation because we're actually seeing his day-to-day operation up in the temple in heaven, and he's walking amongst the menorah, the 7 candlesticks, as these prayers are coming up, and that sort of thing. And he's I think he gives the I don't want to misquote it, but anyways, you can read that for yourself.
Did anybody have anything on what we on a commentary or anything like that?
Besides, it was great, and thanks for the insight.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm really excited to go through this book, and Josh has some okay. Yeah, I'm really excited to go through this book, and one of the things about having to go present it and read through it is that I'm forced to actually, study it and come up with some observations myself. And so, I encourage, of course, all of you to do the same. And also, when you come into these discussions next week, we'll be going through chapter 4, probably chapter 5 too. Is Michael, Rob, and I obviously were reading in advance. You guys have the link to this. Feel free to read it as well and come in and have some observations of your own. I'm amazed that I'll go through and I have all my notes written out, and then I'm hearing Rob and Michael talk about stuff. I'm like, oh, I totally didn't see that. Like one of the little things that Michael brought up tonight, where in chapter 2 at the wedding of Cana, we can't call it the wedding of Cana, of course, in the Hebrew, it's just the wedding of in Galilee, in Beat Galilee, the house of Galilee. It doesn't it identifies his mother as Miriam, and I didn't even think that that in the other gospel it's just his mother. So I thought that was really cool. I'm going to be looking now to see if when it talks about his brethren and other stuff, if there are other names that are identified in this book that don't end up in the Greek gospel.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the commentaries from each of Noel and Michael because, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that I'm looking at that I didn't even pick up from what you guys pulled out. So I'm really enjoying to do that and share it.
So, Josh, you had the question. I did see that question earlier. Thank you for reminding me about it. You asked, you had made the connection between Yahusha turning water to wine, and of course, this is the beginning of his ministry. And it is important because it's a declaration of who he was, that he was going to be this conquering king who was going to come in. And because, again, the prophecies of the millennial kingdom is that people would be freely drinking from wine on the hills. It's going to be a good time, good party, right? And Josh brought up similar to Noah, who made wine after the flood. And the idea is that the world was drowned out by floodwater, obviously. And one of the first things we see Noah doing is making wine. Now, there's a lot I can say to that. I'm not sure that I should say tonight, but you know what? We're going to go there. And one of the presentations I'm actually working on right now, and the reason that I'm a little cautious about speaking on this is just because it's one thing when I have like a bunch of verses and notes in front of me. It's another thing once I've kind of put them together and figured out what all this means. So I can't tell you what all this means at this time, but the Aramaic Targum in Genesis, it says two things. One is that before Noah got on the ark, there was he was told to get an illumination stone, like this illuminating rock, and it said that it came from paradise. Now, the Aramaic Targum doesn't give you any further explanation on this. What I have found that's really interesting is that there are over a dozen different scriptural texts on the flood. Well, one of them talks about this illumination stone that was on the ark, and that accordingly, okay, now again, the Targum doesn't say this. I can't say this with 100% assurance that this is the gospel truth, but apparently the sun and the moon did not shine the entire time the floodwater started until it hit the land. So what that means was, on the earth, as everything was being killed, everything with the ruach was being uh, uh, destroyed, that it was complete darkness. And on the flood, all they had was this illumination stone that would, I guess, it came from paradise, and it would glow when it was daytime and nighttime. Now, I bring this up because it I'm building the case right now that on the mountain of worship and its proximity to paradise. Okay, so Noah is able to get this illumination stone from paradise. Well, what happens right after the flood is that on this mountain of worship, Noah goes and he rebuilds the altar that Adam and Eve built. And what does he find there? He finds this grapes from the vine that came from paradise. All right. This is according to the Aramaic Targum. The Aramaic Targum says that Noah took these grapes and he planted them, and they came from paradise. And this is what he got drunk on. All right. So when you jump over to the Apocalypse of Baruch, or also known as Third Baruch, this is where it gets really interesting, because Baruch identifies these grapes that came from the garden in paradise it appears that he identifies them as the same ones that Satan planted, Hasatan. And so, according to Third Baruch, the fruits that Adam and Eve partook of was not just any ordinary grapes; they were like fermented grapes, and that they took from the tree of knowledge of good and evil that Satan actually planted there, and that actually connects with the book of Adam and Eve, where Yahuwah said, "The reason I told you not to go to that tree was because he knew Satan would be in that tree." Well, why would Satan be in that tree? Well, according to Third Baruch, he planted that tree. According to the Aramaic Targum, the fruit from that tree Noah planted. So now Noah is actually partaking in the grapes that came from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. All right, and I don't know what to make of all this yet. Um, but the theme of wine and scripture is fascinating indeed. This is the stuff that gets me really excited. Like, it's okay that I can't explain this. I know this is going to trip some people out hearing this, but and then hearing, this is the wine of the covenant, and so on and so forth. And I will not drink wine again until I'm in the kingdom with you guys, and these kind of things. And so, all that to say, that's the connection that I see right there with Noah. If the Aramaic Targum is correct in identifying with Third Baruch, the wine that he drank immediately after flood came from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Again, I kind of raise up my hands like, so, I don't know. I'm just don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. That's interesting. I would think that if that were true, that it was done so because we see in the ark that the seed of Hasatan was preserved with Ham, and not Ham, but Noah's.
Yeah,
Yeah, Ham
through him.
from Ham. Okay, getting it mixed up here, from Ham. And so, why would it not be other preservation of what started at the beginning, meaning the tree of knowledge, good, and evil, being also available to more or less, because he did a restart, because everything's in motion. It got so bad he had to more or less change the scenario and then let it play itself out. That's a thought.
Well, okay, so going off on this little tangent, but I also want to point out, because this last or a week ago, I gave a presentation on the sin of Ham, or the curse of Ham, finally explained. And I explained that Ham, being the cursed seed of Cain, the sin is that he, of seeing his father's nakedness, was that he saw Noah's wife naked and in fact slept with her. That's explained, of course, in the Targum. I take it through in Leviticus and so on and so forth. And my theory on this is that, and based on multiple texts and so on and so forth, that Ham's mother was Naamah, but Naamah didn't make it on the ark. Noah's wife in this context was Shem and Japheth's mother, but not Ham's. My point is that what is Noah doing at this time? He's drunk on the wine that came from the grapes in paradise, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so we are seeing a complete repeat, and I think Rob was just hinting at this, of what happened in the garden, right? Adam and Eve are partaking of the fruits, and boom, Cain is conceived through Hasatan. And so again, we see now Ham is conceiving a child with Noah's wife, who is Canaan. And that is why that's cursed. But again, it all revolves around the same fruits again from the tree. So it's crazy when you just start digging into these multiple texts and you start seeing all this stuff. And I think, Josh, when you asked that question, you probably didn't even imagine that it was going to go in that direction that it went in. But I decided just to lay that out there anyways. You asked, did Noah preserve the scrolls from Enoch, Methuselah, in the ark? Just a question. So, yes, there's actually Some texts say that he actually took Adam and Eve's body onto the ark. And I'd have to dig on which ones those are. He also took. He would have had to have taken Enoch scrolls. It talks about, of course, Noah authored. I think. Well, one book after the flood, but he took another book, according to some sources I've read, that was the same book that all the fathers had read from Adam on down. My theory on Enoch, this is just my theory. I have not read any scholarly work on this. This is just from me sitting down and reading through Enoch from beginning to end, over so many repeats. Is that my theory is that the first book of Enoch is anywhere from 4 to 5 different books. Enoch authored many, many books, not just one, and I think that however many he wrote, it could have been in the dozens or whatever hundreds. He could have a book could have been like a pamphlet, like 2 pages. Like it didn't. It's not. We're not talking like 100-page book here, right? Is that Enoch was assembled at a later time, very similarly to how Psalms and Proverbs would have been assembled. Obviously, when like David and the sons of Korah and whoever else is writing the Psalms, they're not like writing into a journal and it just becomes Psalm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through. Somebody else had to come along at some point in history and say, we're going to take all these collections and put them together in this order. And so that's my theory on Enoch, that and that some of it is assembled out of order. Like if you look at the calendar, it's not put in order. If that was purposeful or not, I think it was on purpose. But so yeah, he would have had from this first scribe of Yashar'el, Enoch, he would have had all that on the ark.
Rebecca, I think, wants to ask a question on wine.
Yeah, Rebecca, please jump in.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to know what your thoughts are on why Christian churches are so anti-wine drinking. One of the main arguments I had, I grew up like you did in churches, typical mainstream, non-denominational / Pentecostal / Baptist, whatever you want to call it. One of the main arguments I had with my mother was she came over one day and I had a bottle of wine sitting on my kitchen table and she just flipped out. And I said, but Jesus turned water into wine. And at the first of the month, every month we have communion at the church and everyone, including the children, are drinking wine. And that's different. And she said, she claimed that Jesus turned water into grape juice. It wasn't alcoholic, which I thought
Yep.
was just absolutely ridiculous. And I said, this is just such a hypocritical stance. I don't read anywhere in scripture where it says don't drink wine. The only thing I see is don't be drunken for example. Well, look what happened to Noah. He maybe got a little too drunk, or to me that there was no prohibition. Jesus drank wine all the time, and I told her that, and she couldn't. She had a meltdown and couldn't even answer in any sort of coherent way. She literally told me to drop the subject. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on why Christian churches are so anti.
Yep.
I mean, I understand maybe you shouldn't be drinking whiskey and getting drunk, but I've never saw anything wrong with wine.
So just so you know, in Torah, and maybe Rob or Michael could, and Rob, Michael, please jump in too. I don't want to just take over here, but they could maybe drop in this scripture where it talks about for Sukkot, which is one of the fall feasts. One of the part of the commands is that you actually go buy strong drink if you would like and drink away. So even strong drink is, we are told to drink strong drink. This goes beyond wine at this point in scripture. Like, if you want whiskey, go for it, right? Your Scotch, bourbon, whatever. And now I can't speak for the Hebrew commentary on John because as you know, this is all brand new. I was actually just looking up this week, and the Greek word for wine, commentators say. So people, there's different types of arguments. Some people will say, no, it was grape juice. There was nothing for he made, this is why it tasted so good, because they didn't even realize, they were just so drunk they didn't even know, but it was really grape juice. And then other people will say, oh yeah, but it was wine, but it was so watered down that you would have to drink like 20 bottles to get drunk or whatever. Commentators in the Greek, they will say that the wine being described here is on par with very strong wine. This is not watered down wine. This is pure wine. Okay, so that you could drink a bottle and you're you know I don't know, out in the field, dancing, having fun or whatever. So here's something that's really interesting, because if you go anywhere else in the world, and you talk to them about this, that you're not going to connect with anyone else. When my family and I were living in France, before the pandemic hit, one of the, I actually went, every time I've been to enough countries. Every time you go to a country, I expect there to be uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Shocked, sh- shocked in some way about the culture. Um, it's never usually how I think. I expected France to be like a snooty coffee culture. Like they like their lattes and espressos, and they have their cappuccino machines and all this kind of stuff. And no, that wasn't there. Like their coffee was terrible. I mean, I like coffee, and I'll take trucker stop coffee, from a lady who calls me hun or whatever. She's pouring it. It wasn't even like, it was like vending machine stuff. But there, what I was shocked with is that they love their wine. It flows cheaper than water. And you go out there at 9 a.m. and they open up their stores, and people are sitting out there on the streets sipping their wine, like 9 a.m. in France, like all over, right? So they wouldn't even relate to these type of arguments. So, well, what do you know? The whole grape juice argument is a post mud flood thing. Grape juice was I think invented by Welch's, and it came about in 1869. And as soon as that happens, there was a big push to get people to buy non-fermented grape juice, and that's where this whole thing started. And so a lot of our grandparents, they grew up. My grandparents would have been children in the Great Depression and beforehand with Prohibition, but yeah, they grew up in a culture where it was a sin. Like it was against the law, and it was just a sinful, and to their dying day they would never let it touch their lips. And that's just, I don't know, so um well, as Josh said, yeah, because fermented doesn't usually go bad, and you obviously, as you know, you can keep a bottle of wine for many years. And some of the stronger drinks, you can go even longer back, and they taste better the longer you go back. So it's just, yeah, it's weird. It's weird that and some people, there's still churches today where they are just, they won't even discuss it. They've settled it. It's grape juice. Don't ever touch anything alcoholic. How can that be anything but sin? And that's what I love about Torah, is that you can't just make up what is sin. You could try as hard as you want. You can add the 11th commandment. The 11th commandment is don't drink, right? It's like, sorry, it actually tells you in Torah to go buy some strong drink. So you have those rights to do that. And then I would also add that throughout Scripture, it's talking about the drunkard. Okay, it's talking about someone who is living a lifestyle of just being drunk, on the bottle. And as we all know, anyone who is an alcoholic or a drunkard, they're no good to anybody. They ruin relationships. They're not holding jobs. They're not benefit to society. This is what Scripture's talking about. You don't want to become a drunkard. It's not saying you can't open a bottle and express merriment and joy with it. Michael and Rob, is there anything you wanted to toss in there?
No, I had nothing really further to add on what you had mentioned already.
Okay.
Same with me.
That's interesting, Pamela. You said the book of Isaiah is also several manuscripts. That actually makes sense to me. Totally makes sense. I had never thought about that before, though. But um, I almost, man, I don't know who was in charge of taking these multiple books and making them into one. If that was one of Ezra's things that he did it, I don't know. Like, I don't want to cast uh, blame, good, bad, but I almost wonder, like, if we just had, like, let's take like the Book of Enoch. All right, like, let's just say there's 4 books in First Enoch. One of them is, of course, the Book of the Watchers. You have the Book of the Luminaries. You have the Book of the Parable. Um, and so, what if we just had in our Bibles? First Enoch would be first, second, third, fourth Enoch. You have Isaiah, right? You have, I don't know how many it would be, first, second, third Isaiah, and it just, I don't know. I wonder if we would kind of get the context of the book a little bit better, because when you're reading through the prophets, like it was mentioned, Ezekiel in here written out of order. When you get which I don't know if that's true or not, but when you're getting into is Ezekiel, Isaiah, do kind of jump around a lot, and you're like, okay, where am I now? Okay, we're back on the millennial kingdom over here. Okay, now we're back on the judgment of Yehuda here. And I wonder about that. If we would get the context a little bit better, if they were just presented as they were written down. Well, we should probably go ahead and officially end night, and then we could, as anybody would like. But go ahead and close. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And again, I'm excited about where this is going. And I feel like we're really, here at the Unexpected Cosmology, we're kind of just on the cusp of something that's coming. So I'm excited about that. And all right, I'll go ahead and pray. Our dearest Father in heaven, Yahuwah, the Most High Elohim of Yashar'el, thank you for these gifts you are offering to us, these revelations in these end times, these finds, these books that are being brought out of the open, that give us a better, clearer picture of all the puzzle pieces that come together, like the Hebrew Gospel of Yochanan. And so we pray we would be good stewards of what you give us, that we would study these things out, and that we would come to understand who you are and your plan in history. And we pray all these things in your name, in the name of your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, and in the Ruach HaKodesh. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Noel, remember we were talking, or in the Millennial Kingdom room, we both come to the understanding that Roman calendar wasn't kept during the Millennial Kingdom. We weren't counting the days, maybe as we have been.
Correct. I'm not sure if you finished your thought there. You cut out. Yeah, that's one of the points I'd brought up before. However you feel, whether you're lunar Sabbath or Seventh-day Sabbath, and of course I'm Seventh-day Sabbath, one of the things they'll point out is that the calendar was messed up so bad by Rome, and they went through several different variations. They even went to like 8 to 10-day weeks, and I say that according to the idea that the millennial kingdom already happens, all of that is irrelevant to me, because when Yahusha came back, he would have reset everything. He would have destroyed the rules. I see that the Seventh-day Sabbath was kept, and again, it's a big straw man here in America. Says that to me. I'm like, well, okay, fine. And we're, Frida and Thor and so on and so forth. But one of the what I believe is an evidence of the millennial kingdom, that the entire world was on a set calendar, is the fact that there's probably 100 that on the seventh day, what we would call Saturday, they all agree, they all have some variation of Sabbath in their day. It's embedded in the day, and I can't find any other explanation for that, because history. And how in the world did all of these cultures, all across the world, speaking different languages, all want to honor Yahuwah on the Sabbath day? It doesn't make any sense to me. And like I can't buy the explanation that because Israel was scattered, that they all had influences on these governments. They changed it. They were scattered first and foremost because they weren't even keeping it. But yeah, so that's one thing I see, and so this really confuses a lot of people because when you get into the 1,000 years of missing time and coins maps, I was astonished. Somebody came into the chat and they showed the famous the map from the 1600s that shows the circular Earth. That it had a date on it of like I or J, like 6 something. Like it wasn't the 1600s. It was actually the 600s when nothing was made. And so, yeah, I believe that in the Millennial Kingdom, currency came to an end. That's why money, it was being circulated up until maybe the 700s, something like that, and then it kind of came to an end. And yeah, so during the Millennial Kingdom, they wouldn't have been keeping the calendar of Rome. They wouldn't have been circulating money. They would have, had different dates, whatever that was. We don't know, but that's been scrubbed, and that's the reason why we've got the, the missing years. People weren't dying, so they weren't getting buried. They might have been dying. Maybe there was, the gravestones are confusing to us. Maybe that's something we need to seek out. Like maybe there were dates, and we need to look for that residue. I just thought of that just now. Like maybe there really is residue that would help. We should be looking for something from like, the year 6047 or something like that. That would really interest me. Assuming that the millennial from like the year 6000 to the year 7000 or something like that. What are my thoughts on the Mandela effect? My thoughts on the Mandela effect is that the Mandela effect is legit. I can't speak for, I think people take it overboard, and when people get really into the Mandela effect, they're like, oh, I just want new changes, and I want, they can't wait for there to be new changes to reality, and, and it's like, okay, that wasn't a change to reality right there. That's just you not knowing some simple facts. I can't stand it, particularly when people, go in and talk about how the Bible is all changed, and like I try to get their credentials, and they're, they just, I don't know, they think they know the Bible and they don't, and they're claiming these changes are made, but there are some undeniable things that have clearly changed. The best example that I can give that nobody has been able to refute, nobody, is Dolly's braces in the James Bond movie Moonraker. And clearly the context is, when Dolly smiles at Jaws and now she has no braces, she just got these white teeth. Like the context is gone now. The idea and people remember this. She smiled. There were braces. It was true love because Jaws had these middle teeth and she had these sloppy braces, and now they're gone. But there was a lot of Mandela effects before I knew the Mandela effect was a thing. Like I remember the original van in Back to the Future, the terrorist van, that had changed. And I remember when I was watching that film and going, like, it didn't sit right with me. I'm like, what? I didn't have any context to it. I just had to accept the new reality. But I'm like, I don't remember that van. But I will say, and this is a controversial one, but I will stand by it, is that I do believe that there was one change made to the Bible. People will, this is fighting words. People will say, no, they don't have that authority. I say they do. The Lion and the Lamb. Let me look this up here, just so I don't misquote this. Okay, Isaiah 11:6, and a wolf shall dwell with the lamb. So I remember, and then the lion shall lay with the lamb. There is nowhere in Scripture now where it says that. I remember seeing artwork. I remember statues. I remember people talking about it. I remember seeing paintings of a lion and lamb laying together with Isaiah 11:6 inscribed there. I remember the fact that my older brother is a young earth creationist, and he actually appeared in the Ben Stein movie Expelled. I remember sitting down with him and having discussions about the millennial kingdom based on chapter 11 of Isaiah and how the lion will lay down with the lamb. I remember I would sit down and read that chapter over and over again and be comforted by it. And it used to be one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. And I would just open up Isaiah to read the lion and the lamb. And the first time I remember the change was in the year 2008. Oddly enough, Obama had just become president. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that was the timestamp. And so remember, the Mandela effect won't even be talked about till like 2014, 2015. So this is 2008. I didn't know what to do with this. I remember opening up Isaiah 11 and reading, and it said, and the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and I just had this sickening feeling, this kind of dark feeling, and I closed it up, and I kid you not, probably 7 or 8 years went by before I opened that passage up to read it again. It was when I learned about the Mandela effect, and I opened up and I was able to accept that. So that's just a reality. Like, the Mandela effect is real. I remember so many things. I remember Chick-fil-A when it was spelled CHIC without the K. It's just, there's so many different things. You just go on and on and on. And I know those are not faulty memories. I know those are true memories.
I remember Lion and the Lamb, and I mean, I read that over and over in my storybooks. And I have my father's Bible that I've had for many, many years. It goes way back. He died in the early 90s. And it says wolf now, and I do not understand, because I distinctly... And the two things that I can absolutely point to are the ones that you brought up. Dolly with the braces, because again, it makes no sense if she doesn't have braces. And the lion and the lamb. That's the one thing out of the Bible that I know for a fact has changed.
So, the reality is, it probably does have something to do with CERN. I know that's the popular theory, but it's probably the true theory, and CERN hasn't fired up in a long time. But they're very well likely whatever was happening with CERN, realities were changing. I'll give a quick example, but before we leave the lion and the lamb, or the wolf and the lamb, I remember when I learned about the Mandela effect, I started calling it, what I do, I call up pastors, and I would ask them, and I would say, hey, I'm having a hard time finding it. Do you know where I could find the lion and the lamb? And they would say, oh yeah, Isaiah 11, chapter 11. And they would be like, hold on a second. And then I would wait there. I would wait there as they flip there, and they're reading it, and they're like silent. And I could always remember the responses, and they would just have this like darkness, and it'd be like, well, I guess I just remembered that wrong. And that would always be the response. Well, I guess I remember. They just accepted the reality that, all these things, all these sermons that were spoken that are apparently gone now. That's the creepy thing. I've looked all through, like, where are they? Where's the commentary? Where's the sermons? Gone. I don't know how to explain that. But here's where the Mandela effect gets really, where reality just gets wonky. Back in 2016, and I think CERN was firing up at this time, I remember when the Mandela effect, there was a couple things that happened. I remember when the JFK limousine went from two front drivers and JFK and his wife in the back Jackie to 6 seats, where now there were 2 more in the middle, which then changed the whole theory of the driver being able to turn around and shoot him, because now there were 2 people there. But the movie Apollo 13, the Ron Howard film with Tom Hanks, something happened in the movie where originally the line was, and I think it still is now, this Mandela effect has gone away. But I remember the original line was, Tom Hanks says, Houston, we have a problem. Okay, present tense, we have a problem. All right. And I remember when the Mandela effect hit, and every single copy you could find, Tom Hanks now says, Houston, we've had a problem. So what would happen is I would go, I'd go into chat rooms and stuff, and I'm talking with people and trying to point this out, and they're like, "Oh, well, Noel, your memory is just bad because that's ridiculous. He never said that. He never said we have a problem because the original astronaut, Jim Lovell, I think his name was, he actually told Houston, we've had a problem," which is true. He did. And then this is where it gets really creepy. I remember after it changed from "we have a problem" to "we've had a problem," it changed back to "we have a problem." And I would try to tell people, guys, it changed again. And they'd be like, "No, you're just confusing the fact that the real astronaut actually said we've had a problem, and the movie always said we have a problem." Are you guys following me? Like, I would start to see these changes happen in real time. Going back, it was so trippy seeing reality change. I remember going and seeing Kit Kat week by week in the store. I would follow it, and what was it? Kit Kat with a dash or without a dash this week, and it was always changing. I remember going into the stores around the same time, 2015, 2016, and seeing when Hillary, on all the magazines, Hillary Clinton was being changed from two L's to one L. And now it's like, back again. And so all I can say is that there was a time several years ago where these changes were happening in real time to people who were paying attention to it. And I think it was happening from CERN, because once CERN, it was no longer getting fired up, the Mandela effect actually, they stopped. Like, the changes weren't happening anymore. So I know that's
What do you think they're doing over at CERN exactly? I mean, I know it's completely evil and it's creepy, but what are they doing exactly? I don't get it.
I don't know. I mean, we were told they're, particle smashing colliders, and there's a lot of different
ideas. That's what I've heard. They're trying to open up the pit to let some of these who out.
Yeah, I mean that's the main theory. I said I don't know, but because obviously I don't know, but yeah, that was the main idea that several years ago, 10 years ago, that they were attempting to open up the pits or portals that would connect to the spiritual realm, and it's almost like it's almost like J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, and I was just talking about this today. I should bring this up because this connects to the Millennial Kingdom, because I've been looking at Tolkien's material again to try to find clues of the Mud Flood and the Millennial Kingdom. I believe I found some. But, the idea of the Ring of Power is one of the reasons why in his stories, like if an elf were to wear the ring, my understanding is they wouldn't disappear and become invisible because they're already a spiritual being. The elves, according to Tolkien lore, are both in the material and spiritual plane at the same time, whereas men and hobbits and dwarves are purely material beings that, they become a spiritual being when they turn it on. So I think about power that, you see like the CERN, the big the circles, and that it's almost like there's something that they're trying to collide the spiritual and the physical realms together, and that when those colliding of realities were coming together, things were changing. That's the only. It's like what?
Ghostbusters.
Well, give me an example.
They showed it in Ghostbusters. Remember at the end of the first movie, how it had the portal over the building in New York? And then they brought out, and they're like, "Don't think of anything." And then he thought, and it became.
Oh, the Marshmallow Man, yeah, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, yeah, yeah, and so that's what I think is happening, and maybe all sorts of things were materializing. Who knows? That's why I say I can't say assuredly, but
the other thing, looking for the God particle. And
yeah, what's that about?
It's just blasphemy once again. It's
what is the God particle? I've read about that and I don't understand it.
Oh, I don't. Yeah,
well, when you start trying to create life, this is about that. They think they can find that and they can create life. It's the same story from Hasatan.
Yeah. So J.R. Tolkien, speaking of him, because I've really been digging into him recently, he had a really interesting thought on his idea of evil is really interesting. That his idea of Satan is that, I think this is pretty spot on. He said that even if Satan were to actually win, and this goes into your the question you just asked, Josh, even if Satan were to win, hypothetically, um, Satan's whole idea is that he wants to take the creation of Yah the Most High and corrupt it and twist it, because, as you know, like C.S. Lewis said, that he can't invent or create anything. He can only take what already exists and pervert it. And Tolkien said, in the end, Satan would have no choice but to, if he won, to destroy all of creation and eliminate it, because he would never be happy. Even though he corrupted Yah's invention, he would never be happy with it, because it originated ultimately from the Most High, which I think is a very interesting thought.
And
and
he
so,
clearly hates us. He hates
yeah,
us.
yeah, it goes back to the prophecy of the fact that it was prophesied that Adam would sit on the throne of Satan that he once sat on in the garden, which I think has already been fulfilled when Adam was resurrected from Sheol. According to the Gospel of Nicodemus, that's when he went and sat on the throne. Satan was hurled out. He clearly wasn't sitting on the throne before that either. But so that's what's happening is, partly Satan is. But here's the thing, though. Think about it like this: everything that's been happening in the Mandela effect, aside from the Lion of the Lamb one, which is a big one, everything that has been happening, it's all like corporate stuff. It's like, Chick-fil-A, or the fruit of the loom symbol, or like, it's all these like corporate symbols that they who do they belong to begin with? They belong to Satan. That's all his property that he's ultimately changing. Like, he's rebranding it. The Wizard of Oz, with the scarecrow carries a gun now. Things like he's packing heat now. All those kind of things.
What?
Yeah, he's carrying a gun now.
Oh my god, you got to be kidding me.
So
That's ridiculous.
yeah, I know, right? But anyways, but what I'm saying is that that is, leaving the Bible aside, that is Satan's right to change and alter what is his to begin with, right? An artist, who the artist has the right to change his own work. Like George Lucas has the right to go in and change Star Wars as many times as he wants. That's his product. He created it. He's the artist. He can do that. And so Satan has a right to things he has ownership over. He has a right to go in and change that. We can mourn all that, but what are we ultimately mourning? If we truly love these films and we don't want them changed, it's like, well, maybe this is alerting us to that we're loving the wrong things. So
I forgot about the Star Wars one. It definitely was changed for sure.
well, no, there's no Mandela effect with Star Wars that I know of, but George Lucas did go in and he's made several special editions. I was using that as an example that he has a right to go in and change his own product. Just like Rocky IV, was re-released this week, and it's like I think 40 minutes of new footage. Like, he completely altered the film, and Sylvester Stallone has the right to do that. He's the director, he's the creator. But one of the things I was talking about in the one of the rooms this morning in the Esoteric Hollywood film room was that I have been looking into Tolkien, and in Tolkien's cosmology, the Earth started out flat. All right, so you think of Middle Earth as kind of like Pangea. It's this big island in the middle. The ocean surrounds it, and sometime in the Second Age, the Earth got changed. This is really ridiculous but on an exoteric level, the Earth changed from being flat to a globe. And when that happened, like, if you guys remember Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, his homeland, his island, was destroyed when the oceans overlapped it and destroyed it, because now there was curvature to the ocean. It's really ridiculous, but on an esoteric level, it makes a lot of sense. And this is where it gets really trippy, and we lose sight of this in the movies. So, on an esoteric level, the Earth we inhabit really did go from a flat Earth to a globe. It really did. not exoterically. It's still flat. But according to, as you say, Josh, yeah, Tolkien, he knew. Yeah. So he was totally initiated. He had to have been. The knowledge he has of the ancient world, I'm just blown away at some of the stuff he talks about. But the fact is that Yah did hand us over to the delusions of our own mind, and the Earth went from flat to a globe. People believe they live on a globe Earth now. Well, this is where it gets really trippy. So in the Lord of the Rings mythology, there is the land of the West, the undying lands. All right, that the elves are trying to get to. So if you remember at the end of the movies, Frodo, Bilbo, Gandalf, and the elves, they get on these ships and they go sailing off to the lands. Well, the land that they're going to in Tolkien's story only exists on the flat Earth. You can't get there on a globe. And what Tolkien was saying was that on these elven ships, they were leaving the globe behind, and they were going to a lost continent, again, that can only be found on a flat Earth. And I want this to really sink in with everybody, because this is exactly what I'm looking for. I am looking for a missing chunk of land that is hidden from us on globe Earth maps, because it doesn't work on a globe Earth, because you can't have that land up there. And I want to find these elven ships. I want to like set sail, get me on the elven ship. I want to go find this land, because the elves, in my opinion, mirror the Adam and Eve in their original state, and the resurrected saints. And they're people that are inhabiting both. They're both fully spiritual creatures and fully physical. And anyways, it's crazy when you actually look at what he was actually advocating in these stories. I don't think he's talking about Antarctica or the North Pole. I think that's the Earth as we know it is the that there's actually a moon map, and that the idea that there is a projection of the Earth on the moon of the total realm, and everything we know about the AE map is just a little tiny sliver of that there's actually a huge chunk of land up there. That's why I'm saying that that land doesn't exist on the globe. It only exists in the flat Earth realm. So those are some of the things I've been just blown away with, just digging into Tolkien and being like, are there clues here? Was he showing us things? Were they putting things in our face? And I think they were.
Yeah, if you look at the globe, all points converge. What is it? The lines of latitude and longitude. So it gets, in the globe, it gets smaller and smaller, even though Antarctica is supposed to be the biggest. So if you actually went, as you're sharing, it doesn't fit on a globe. It'd be like if I went due south from where I am, without being on a globe, it'd be like, yeah, there's big space there. And if we went north, I like to say north to Alaska from where I am, but the feeling is when you take it off the globe, we're not going to this small point in the middle, or this small point to the what we'd say to the south. It's bigger. I just don't know how, but like you said, by making that model, it's hidden land somehow.
Right. Josh, you asked the question, when does it become a globe? I wasn't sure if you were asking that question in context to Tolkien, because I'm not a Tolkien historian, if that's what you're asking, or either. So, okay. So that's obviously, do you guys know the name of that map from the 1600s? That big projection map that was brought to the public in 2017. As I pointed out earlier in the night, they say it was made in like the 1600s, which is ridiculous. Also, the fact that they clearly knew Antarctica was there, even though it wouldn't be discovered until the 1800s. That's huge cognitive dissonance that people who were into that map needed to deal with. But when you actually look at the date, there's like a I or Y there, so it was clearly made in the 600s, not the 1600s, and I believe that was pre-millennial kingdom. So the globe lie, I have one of two theories on this. One is that the Alexandrian narrative is correct in a post-millennial kingdom, that you had guys like um, Aristophanes, who, he took a friend and got a couple sticks out there and measured the shadows and decided, oh, we live on a globe. And Aristophanes also was the guy who measured the heights of the heavens and flipped the earth on its axis. Like, they don't actually tell you how much this guy apparently came up with. It's pretty shocking, and how apparently correct he was. I don't know if all that's a lie or if that really was a buildup, that there were these Alexandrians in Egypt that were building up this narrative, and then it came to a sudden end. And then when the millennial kingdom came to an end, that they picked up this narrative again. But either way, yeah, that, like, the earth became a globe, um, probably just post mud flood. Like, it was because we see in the collective consciousness in the 1800s, people still believe the earth was flat. Like, they were pushing it on the academic level, but huge amount of people in the 1800s, like the common man, still believed the earth was flat. And so that kind of tells us right there that they were altering people's thinking. And it may have been, this is why I brought up the ending to the Lord of the Rings, because we know, from what I've shared, if the Odes of Solomon is legit, and I believe it is, Yahusha and the others said that they would put this darkness over people, on the people who were persecuting them, and that they would be hidden from them. And I think the globe Earth narrative is how the set apart saints were able to hide from their persecutors. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's almost like the delusion, as we know, was Yah's will on humanity. He handed them over to their own the delusion, the darkness that they desired in their heart, and so, yeah, the millennial kingdom, that I'm advocating, doesn't work on a globe, as you guys know, and we have to live in a flat Earth realm.
Crazy to think that Antarctica was supposed to be discovered in 1820 or whatever. Like, nobody before sailed south.
Well, the fact that it's on, the fact that it's actually on that map, they show Antarctica. Like, they all knew it was there, that there was this ring. So I don't know. That's just, it's outlandish that nobody. It, like, when you actually look at the narrative now, and you're like, really, like, humanity's here for thousands of years, and they just got around to discovering Antarctica in the 1800s. And here's the other one, Australia. So there was a guy who commented on my YouTube channel, I think, about Australia, and this is really interesting. So when the mud flood hit and they had to rewrite history, right? They had to create this whole narrative. It's almost like Australia didn't make it into the cut. Like, they maybe didn't have enough time. They didn't really invent its history. And so when you go back in Australia, you go back to the 1800s when the white people arrived and made a slave not a slave colony, a prison colony. You have the Aborigines who were there, who before the 1800s, there was nothing. There's no history, nothing. All they have is it's like their dream state or whatever they call it. And so it's almost like with Australia, they had to come up with it. Like, we never knew it existed for thousands of years history. We just discovered it, and they had, they had no narrative to invent for it. They had to invent something for Europe and America and all this kind of stuff. So I find that really interesting as well. It's ridiculous that all that wasn't circumnavigated and known, and we know it had to have been. It had to have been.
Yeah, I was looking at a YouTube channel and earlier today, and one of them was going all over Tartaria in Australia. So looking back in, so that destroys this so-called modern narrative once again.
See, I haven't looked into that. I would like to look into Tartare in Australia, because obviously that would be my natural conclusions as well, that there's got to be a history there, that they were just too lazy to tell it. They couldn't come up with something like, oh, I don't know, the Spanish, or just name your world empire colonized it in the 1500s, and maybe some disease wiped them out. I don't know. They just didn't come up with something. It was just sitting there, and it was just discovered in the 1800s. This huge chunk of land in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, I'll show you that channel. I'll try and find it and put it in chat. But yeah, the cognitive dissonance was running deep.
You know, I always had cognitive dissonance when it came to the globe model. Even as a little child, I never could wrap my mind around a globe because all I kept thinking was that the people in Australia are upside down and don't know it, and I'm standing sideways off of the Earth. And how do you know? When I heard about flat Earth, that was just like the biggest relief to me ever because I could never wrap my head around the whole globe model. I just couldn't. And the whole spinning through space and how does water stay on the planet? I mean, I was asking those questions as a kid and, it just felt stupid. So when I heard about flat Earth a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, I mean, literally, I believed that within 5 minutes because I had kind of always believed it. And I couldn't wrap my head around the official narrative.
Yeah, it probably took me about 20 minutes as well. I was going to say something and on what you said, and then like one of the things about Australia, like they almost like they're overreaching at this point when they have to call Australia the land down under, right? It's almost like they're going a little bit too far there. Africa's not the land down under, China's not the land. It's just Australia. They're telling us, they're on the other side of the globe, and it's like if you live in Australia, do you really think you're upside down? Like that's so stupid. But the thing is you're talking about like going your whole life and being told these things. We accept the narrative we're given. So when I was living in Europe, I mean, we have no choice to. We have to. When you go to Europe and you see these big, beautiful palaces, they're just stunning, and nobody builds things like this anymore. And it's a question we have to ask, like where's the blueprints? Who built this? Who financed this? Where did all this come from? And you go there on these tour groups, and you're looking at these huge domes and these pillars and marble floors and staircases and statues and there's some tour guide there to tell you, oh, this was built by such and such person, and and this year, and you go, well, I'm standing here, I'm looking at this building, it exists, it's beautiful. I guess what they're saying must be true, because how could it be something else, right? We have no choice, the way we were raised, to accept the narrative we were given. And then you realize it's all made up, of course. Yeah,
Well, and the fact that they make you feel stupid if you don't believe it.
Yeah. Or as Josh said, he's quoting NASA, we lost the technology and it's difficult to build it back up again. Just like they just announced that, once again, such a bummer, the moon missions were pushed back from 2024 to 2025 now, because they said NASA, they keep pushing it back all the time. Never mind the fact they got there in 1969 on technology that was, similar to like the Game Boy from the 80s. And they can't get back now, and they blamed it this time on bureaucracy and, my favorite, COVID-19. And if you guys have seen the meme of the guy, like the salesman, he's slapping COVID-19, the virus, and he's like, you could slap so many psyops into this bad boy, like a politician is there looking at it. And it's like so true. It's like, how can you not milk COVID-19 anymore? That COVID is responsible for the fact that we can't go back to the moon. Thank you for screwing it up, COVID. And yeah. So they still don't have the technology to get man back there, over 50 years after the first landing.
I was actually sharing some, I posted in one of the rooms about the so-called plans. Like Australia is supposed to send something in 2025 or something. And yeah, they pushed it back a year. But even that one is not supposed to be a manned one. That like they pushed the so-called manned mission to the moon. But Australia isn't a manned mission. They're supposed to send something there. I put it in one of the rooms. Again, it's just like what we talked about it last week. It's just like what a joke.
Well, yeah. So there's been a lot of missions to the moon, and I should specify, versus putting land rovers or whatever they're putting on there versus manned missions. Apparently they can't get men there, but they're able to land all sorts of things on the dark side of the moon. And I point out to this people who still believe the narrative. I'm like, isn't it? I asked them, like, why does NASA keep putting things on the dark side of the moon where you will never see it? And they're like, Israel or India is like, hey guys, we just landed on the moon. And it's like, yeah, why don't you land on the light side of the moon so I can get out my P900 or my telescopes or whatever and look for it? And they know that that's why they can't. I tell people, like, if NASA was truly being scientific, why not go put a 24/7 GoPro type camera on the light side of the moon pointing at the Earth so we can have a 24/7 feed of the Earth and look at like the cloud formations and the weather. And that would be amazing. That would be amazing science if they had that website, wouldn't it? And people just look at me and go, yeah, that would. And they just, and I hope that really starts working on people's cognitive dissonance that they have, that like if NASA were truly science focused, they would do something like that and not just keep landing on the dark side of the moon where we can't see them.
Yeah, it's interesting things I brought up with my son and something he said the other day, like, hey Dad, doesn't it take oxygen for fire to burn? And he's going, so what's up with the sun?
Yeah,
how can that burn if it's supposedly in space? That's what my son said, because I've taught him space is fake.
Yeah.
And he's just like, Dad, then that doesn't make sense how they say that. And I'm like, you got it, son. That's correct. And I said, what about thrust? How can you so-called get thrust? He's like, yeah, exactly. What are you pushing off against? It's like, there you go, son. You got it.
And one of the guys who started asking those questions several years ago was Brian Mullins. You guys remember his channel? And then he vanished. But I'm excited. He's back on Facebook now, and I went back on Facebook just to befriend him. And he's like, he's not making new videos or anything like that. But he was one of the guys back in 2015 that was, I think it was called like Balls on Physics or something like that. And he made so many good videos just questioning like how you can have propulsion in space. How you can have fire in space. One of the great ones he asked was, I remember early on, was if the Earth is a globe and it's spinning, and you were to fly directly over the North Pole, you're now, as soon as you get over, you're spinning one direction. As soon as you get over the North Pole, now you're spinning the opposite direction. And he's like, well, how would that work with an airplane? And like all the globe people are like they had never thought about that before, and just what is that map of? The 1606 Hondius map of Tartary, okay, in northern parts of Asia. Cool. Yeah, and then there was that other guy back in like 2015. He did it was like Casey's Laboratory or something like that. He's not a flat earthist, but he was a guy who had tried to do an experiment. He had like one of those like big vacuum chambers. And I remember he did the video, and flat earthists were all over it. They were loving it. He proved that he couldn't ignite like any rockets in his vacuum chamber. He did something that mimics space. And so flat earthers were jumping all over it, and this guy got so mad, and he tried to make these videos debunking flat earth, and they were like dumb videos after that. But it was great because he proved like all the NASA missions are a hoax. They have to be. There's no possible way that those rockets could be flying in space. It just can't be done. Now, you had pointed out, Mike, and what Elon Musk or I should say, not Elon Musk. I lost his name now. The guy, the Amazon guy. What's his name?
Bezos.
Bozo.
Yeah,
Bezos.
Jeff. Bozo the clown. Jeff Bezos. Actually, what he's doing, where he's just shooting the rocket straight up and back down. It might be. I don't know. It might be a little bit more legitimate, even though I still believe it's a hoax.
Yeah, we're still in Texas. We were looking at where did he take off, where did it supposedly take off, and where did it land, and it was still in Texas. And I was just like, yeah, that still doesn't fit because we'd already be moved.
Yeah, when you look at the William Shatner footage, the guy's 90 years old, right? And he looks good for his age. I got to give it to him. He looks really good for like a 90-year-old guy. But clearly, a 90-year-old guy is not going to be fit to do what they showed in that footage, where if you actually look at the capsule, it comes slamming down and it creates this huge like cloud of dust, like almost like something like a whiff from like a bomb. It goes boosh and comes up, and like that would. I don't care how padded you are, like you would feel it. And then when Jeff Bezos, he's the first to come up. It's very theatrical. He comes and peeks in the window, and one thing I noticed with the footage is like, where's the fire trucks? Where's the ambulances? There was nothing. You would think with something like that, you would bring up the cavalry just in case something went wrong, and it shows that like it was staged. The whole thing was staged. Like there was.
Yeah. Yes, it reminds me of that one that they landed in I don't know, some Central Asian country, and it was like, yeah, just people coming into the field and getting and like saying hi to him and stuff. It's like, wouldn't that be like super hot or super cold? Also, it's in our faces. To like, wait a second.
What did you just say, Josh? You wrote in there, the man who flew to space with William Shatner dies in New Jersey plane crash. Wow, that's the first I've heard of that. That's crazy. Okay, well, maybe that guy knew too much. I'm not laughing at the fact he died. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing that the guy died, but yeah, as you said, all loose ends are tied. Yep. Well, guys, is there anything else you wanted to throw in tonight before I throw in the towel for the night? I do actually want to make I'm going to be searching out Lord of the Rings more, because I'm really like, when I discovered today, as I came to the realization, because I've been like going through the literature and trying to look for clues that according to Tolkien, the Earth started flat. It became a globe, but again, now exoterically that sounds stupid, but if you understand esoterically what he's saying there, and the fact that there were places hidden from the globe that still existed only on the flat plane, that you had to journey if you were like when I was realizing that was the whole ending to the Lord of the Rings, that they were going to a flat realm, to a hidden continent that couldn't be found on the globe, I was like, oh dude, like that's exactly what we've been talking about for the last few months. So that's you could make me a Middle Earth sandwich, Josh. Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually just so you guys know, I'm taking my kids right now through The Hobbit, and it really, there's some really great things in there. I mean, I love the idea that like the orcs are, is Satan trying to create, mimic elves, or the trolls are him trying to, create ints. And you see these ideas of how Satan is trying to distort all things that are good and create things himself. And there's just so much stuff in there that I think ring true to reality, including the nature of evil. And anyways. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off tonight. It was fun talking with you guys. If someone wants to, has something else they want to say, but other than that, I'll just sign off for the night. All right, Michael, good night. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Good night, Hank.
Shalom.
All right. See you guys in a few days.
Good night.